Welcome to a place for those in search of truth and conviction, a place where we discuss culture, politics, philosophy, and everything in between. I'm Luke, and I'm here with Russ. This is Hardly Strictly Politics.
Oh, yes, indeed, dear listener. The HSP boys are back in the saddle once again for episode number 76. Thank you so much for jumping in the saddle with us. 76, dear listener, running headlong into our maturity with you, dear listener. Luke and I are darkening the door of 80. Can you believe it? 2 separate continents, 2 separate countries, 2 separate adult beverages, just to make it fair, and 2 separate cups of coffee fee. 2 separate fact shamings, 2 separate show preps, 2 separate trails to this same inevitable conclusion. 76, dear listener. 1776, that's all we really need to say together, fellow patriots. The spirit of 76. 76, the name of the gas station chain here in the United States. And Luke will love this one. 76, the title of Armin van Buuren's debut album released back in 2003, 2004, something like that.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Dear listener, Luke loves him some Armin van Buuren, and hell, I do too. We both love Armin. But none of that really matters right now, dear listener, and why is that? Because the trail grows longer each and every single week. And 76 means that we've got 76 miles to ride right here, right now on this trail. So let's not tarry. Let's saddle up and ride into episode number 76, which is in the house presently. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Zero Gravity Med. Send us feedback at zero-gravity-media.com. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Podbean, TuneIn, all 5 under Zero Gravity Media. Find us on YouTube, look for Zero Gravity Media and our God tier, Zero G logo. Leave us some feedback at our website using the contact form, that's zero-gravity-media.com/contact. Each week, Luke and I call out one city. And this city, the magic of this city is the city with the most HSP listens during the previous week. So without any further ado, the city with the most HSP listens during the previous week is... absolutely dominating the trail this week, Snohomish, Washington. Thank you, Snohomish. We hope quarantine is going well for y'all. Luke and my thoughts are with you constantly, and things are starting to look much better for Snohomish, Luke. But, you know.
That's such a funny name for a town.
Yeah, it is. It's cute. I like it. But anyway, Snohomish, Luke and I are here in quarantine with you, so don't even sweat it. You believe that. We're right there with you. So
yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Snohomish, Washington. Snohomish.
Yes, sir. That's correct. Yep.
Huh.
It's a cute, comfy place, man. I've been there. It's a really comfy place. So, yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. Where is it?
Right outside of Seattle.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's just jump into it, dude.
Yeah, let's do it, man. Lay it out for us if you would mind. If you wouldn't mind,
all
please,
right,
sir.
Well, dear listener, we have got a jam-packed show for you this week, so we're gonna just get started right into it. But to lay out the trail map, we've got several articles that we've clipped and prepared for you on, of course, Corona. Then we've got some developments in Spygate, which is, I'm so happy to be talking about something other than Corona for once.
Right.
We're gonna take a break. Then I've got an article a listener sent in to me that I'm gonna discuss. I had a listener ask about what the proper role of government should be, what a proper government response should be to all of this. And Russ and I have never fully clarified our position on this. So I'm at least going to clarify mine. I'm sure Russ will probably be in some approximation of agreement on that. We got a couple other little topics. Then we're going to discuss the Fed at the bottom of segment 2. And that should be the show. We might have to go to 3 segments. We don't know yet. So we're going to try and We're gonna try and really, really knock this out of the park and do it quickly for you. So let's just jump right into it, Russ.
Right,
what do you want to lead off with? Cuomo, Fredo?
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. So, dear listener, you probably have already heard Fredo, Chris Cuomo, has come down with the Kung flu, and he's been having fevered dreams of his deceased father and all this kind of stuff. He was on the press conference this Thursday, I believe it was, with his brother, Governor Andrew Cuomo. And man, CNN has really been milking this, Luke. I had an online meeting this week, and every participant in the meeting literally was listening to CNN, and I could just hear them milking this sensationalist news about Fredo coming down with Kung flu. Now, in all seriousness, though, Fredo, seriously, the HSP boys do wish you well. We do hope you get better. We miss your keen insight and your philosophical edge, man. You need to get back and get well as soon as you can. You entertain us greatly, sir. Yes.
Yeah, it's CNN's only asset.
Yes.
I mean, Don Lemon's in tears now over this, so he's just distraught.
Yeah, exactly. So, but in all seriousness, do get better, Chris Cuomo. We do mean it. Do get better. So, yeah. And what else you got about Kung Flu this week, man?
I mean, well, nothing about necessarily Chris Cuomo, but I mean, I'm loaded to the gills here with articles.
Yeah.
So, coronavirus this is a piece from the Daily Wire. Coronavirus task force freezes foreign aid after troubling discoveries. So essentially what has happened is, in classic form, the United States is being their typical altruistic, we need to help save the world self. And while we have people in the United States dying and our healthcare system is being pushed to its limits, meanwhile, we are sending supplies over to other countries. So quoting from this piece, after officials discovered that U.S. foreign aid to countries was not being coordinated with U.S. requests for much needed supplies to handle the crisis, the coronavirus task force headed up by VP Pence clamped down on the process to make sure American needs are prioritized and that countries that are assisting the U.S. get the help they need. In a report published Tuesday, Politico detailed the sequence of events that led to the task force imposing stricter oversight on the handling of U.S. aid. Quote, last week, a Trump administration official working to secure much-needed protective gear for doctors and nurses in the United States had a startling encounter with counterparts in Thailand, the outlet reported. The official asked the Thais for help, only to be informed by the puzzled voices on the other side of the line that a U.S. shipment of the same supplies, the second of two so far, was already on its way to Bangkok. Trump aides were alarmed when they learned of the exchange and immediately put the shipment on hold while they ordered a review of U.S. aid procedures. So this is just total incompetence and failure on behalf of the government. And this is something that never would have been addressed. If it weren't for Trump being in office, if this were Obama, if this were Clinton, if this were probably any of the other Republican candidates, save for perhaps Ted Cruz, they wouldn't have even cared. They would have just let this go on. They would have let this happen. But finally, we have somebody who's going, no, this doesn't make any sense. We're suffering over here. We've got people on lockdown. People are facing financial destitution because they don't have work anymore. And meanwhile, we're sending supplies to Thailand.
Yeah.
And so thankfully, we have Trump in office and we have his administration who's putting an end to this insanity, frankly, is what it is.
Yes, it is.
We shouldn't be sending any aid to any country in any form until our country is debt free. And even then we shouldn't. It should be just totally private and voluntary.
Right.
So, I mean, this is the most egregious form of bad governance in this respect, in this context.
Absolutely. And we literally don't have enough supplies for ourselves, dear listeners. Stop and think about this. And we're sending supplies out. It's unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. So, yeah.
So, and of course, the left is, but our allies, they might be confused or offended. Well, okay, but you'd rather our allies not be confused or offended. You'd rather our allies not be confused or offended and have our citizens dead.
Yeah.
At least our allies aren't dead. Like citizens in our country are going to be unless we get supplies. So it's just, it just goes to show the sheer incompetence of the government. It reminds me of a story a friend told me that lives in San Francisco. She told me that her car was stolen and she was able to locate her car faster than the police because she called the parking enforcement office in San Francisco and asked them about tickets, about parking tickets on a certain license plate, which was her license plate. And they're like, yeah, there was one at this address just yesterday issued for that license plate. And so she goes and there's her car. And the police never found it because their database doesn't communicate with the parking enforcement database.
Yeah. It's unreal.
It's the same. Yeah. It's the same thing, except applied to foreign aid.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I've told you this story before, Luke. The exact same thing happened to a friend of mine in San Francisco. And her car was parked illegally somewhere. So she got like 20 something tickets on her car. And that was how she found her car, was finally calling in and finding, hey, are there a lot of tickets on a car somewhere around here? And it was right outside my apartment. As a matter of fact, every day there'd be 2 more tickets. I was like, damn, man, this person's really stacking up the tickets. Well, her car had been stolen and she found it quicker than the cops did. The cops were, well, parking in this case, we're happy to just sit there and continue ticketing the car rather than, hey, why is this car here? Right?
Yeah. Hey, why does this car have 27 tickets? Maybe it's been stolen. Maybe the owner is not aware that the car is here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's unbelievable, dude. The San Francisco government, it just makes me laugh, man. They're so incompetent. They're so incompetent. It's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, since we're going to talk about this, I had it in bots and I mentioned to mention this to you before we hit the red button, but San Francisco, dear listener, they have just banished their regulations on reusable bags. Okay. You were required to use reusable bags or pay a 10-cent tax at a store for their paper bags. Right. So everybody began to use reusable bags. Well, now, as of yesterday, San Francisco did an about face and you can no longer use reusable bags in order to try to contain the virus. You can't bring anything into the stores. But alas, so that means you're definitely paid to require this 10 cents per bag tax at every grocery store. Of course, they're not going to get rid of the tax. They're not going to do no tax relief for the tax donkeys out there, So,
yeah.
This is
in Germany. I mean, I'm so glad I've got, I ordered 900 plastic bags on Amazon like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
Yeah. I keep like a little stash, like in the trunk, my car doesn't have a trunk, but like you can lift up a panel and I keep them in there in the back. And, anytime I go, I just open that thing up and grab a couple bags and take them in with me. And oh man, I'm loving it now. Everyone's so jealous when I roll up in there with my plastic bags.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
well, let's move on, dude. So, speaking of CNN and Don Lemon, we've got Don Lemon says the network that CNN should not air coronavirus briefings live. Now, you might ask yourself, dear listener, why is that? And you might come to the perhaps erroneous conclusion that it's a question of, are they worried about Trump telling the truth and exposing fake news and all this and that? No, this is, I don't know if you've heard it here first, because I've heard other people say this, but it's true. This is, they are doing this because Trump's approval ratings are going up in accordance with his press conferences.
Indeed.
Every press conference he does, his approval rating goes up.
Yes.
So now, the CNN before they were complaining, oh, Trump, oh my God, he's shutting off the media and blah, blah, blah. And, this is what all dictatorships do. Now they're wanting to themselves do the same thing.
Right.
He's just turning these. Oh my God, these press conferences are the new Trump rallies. Since he can't have Trump rallies anymore, he's turning these press conferences into Trump rallies.
This is the stupidest argument I've ever heard in my life. And
I've got, this is a Washington Examiner piece quoting him. He says, I have said, I don't think you should really listen to what he says. You should listen to what the experts say. I'm not actually sure, if you want to be honest, that we should carry that live. I think we should run snippets. I think we should do it afterward and get the pertinent points to the American people, because he's never, ever going to tell you the truth, Lemon asserted. Guess what he's going to do? If you ask a question, that is a legitimate question. And if he doesn't like the question, he's going to say, that is a mean, nasty question. And then he goes on to say, it's obvious. It's transparent to me. This has become, those press briefings have become the new Apprentice. They've become his new rallies. And he treats the press and the media as if they're talking to the people in his rallies.
What an asshole.
And Cuomo.
What an asshole.
Fredo actually disagreed with him on that. But I mean, this is just so ridiculous. They just don't want to do it because Trump's approval ratings are going up, because he's actually trying to be transparent with the American people.
Yeah. And he's showing real leadership right now, which is fantastic. I mean, can you imagine, again, if this was Barack Obama? I mean, 60,000 died from H1N1 before Barack Obama ever even acknowledged that there was the swine flu happening. Right. And, Trump is taking a lot of criticism because he was dismissive of the virus in the early days. OK, that's a fair criticism, but he was not dismissive of the virus. He took it very seriously. What he was saying is that let's not make the cure worse than the disease, which now we're getting to a point, Luke, where the cure is getting worse than the disease. And Trump has only simply been cautioning about that since the very beginning. apart from reports that Luke and I talked about, I think it was in number 74, maybe it was 75, where we heard that Tucker Carlson had actually gone to Mar-a-Lago to inform the president and plead with him to really take this virus seriously. So, maybe there was a ratchet up in seriousness after that. We don't know. Who knows what happened in that conversation? So, yeah.
I totally agree, by the way. And we'll get to this in segment 2. But I mean, there are a lot of people for whom this has been nothing but pure destruction and financial destitution.
Mm-hmm.
Lives have been destroyed over this lockdown. And that's unfair to those people. And, we were on the stream last night and I was telling Dan, I was like, if I were I'm in a very fortunate situation. I've said on previous shows that my life is actually better off as a result of all of this. Now it's starting to not become that way. I'm like, oh my God, I need to go out and do something, but so far I have seen only a net positive from this for me personally. But then there's other people who are facing financial destitution as a result of this.
Oh, yeah.
And if I were facing financial destitution, given the alternative, I would take Corona.
Yeah. That's an intelligent point, man. Yeah, I probably would too. 10 million unemployed in the last 2 weeks. I mean, it's insane, man. And it's going to skyrocket from here, unfortunately. Restaurants closing. Small businesses will be devastated by this. What we will be left with is a hollowed out marketplace completely dominated by large corporations that can weather this storm. Mom and pop businesses may cease to exist. Now, the president has been encouraging of it. Yeah, okay, this all might happen, but Main Street will rebound, right? And it will be more innovative and forward thinking, and it'll be better. He was like, the restaurants will come back. The hardware stores will come back. Of course, he's right, but it's going to take already, Luke, from now. If we got out of quarantine right now, if we got off lockdown right now, it would take months to rebuild what has already been lost. Months and months and months. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And in segment 2, I've got an article actually that I'll quote about the restaurant industry from the National Restaurant Association.
Very good.
They did a survey of restaurant owners, so we'll get to that here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, it's getting to the point now where it's really starting to feel as though the cure is worse than the problem.
Yes.
Now, you also have to temper that with the fact that things have gotten a lot better. And we have to ask ourselves, what is the real alternative in terms of public health? What would have happened had we not responded in the way in which we did?
Yeah.
And then we're talking, still this. I mean, I've been tracking the numbers in Germany, and it's, the lockdown has, it's like to the day almost. You can see the impact that the lockdown had. And I always think about, what would this curve look like? What would the velocity look like in terms of percentage change per day? It could get out of control really, really quickly. And again, we'll get to this in segment 2, but what this is all about is the government trying to cover up the fragility of our healthcare system. That's what this is. It's a cover up, basically.
Yeah.
I don't want to say cover up, but yeah.
Well, and it's really interesting. There was something I wanted to mention that I forgot to tell you in the pre-show call. A dear listener sent me a video this week that she wanted me to look at and wanted my opinion of. Okay, I forwarded that video around to numerous other dear listeners because it's really mind-blowing, Luke. And what ended up happening this week is that all of these hospitals were coming out, particularly that hospital in Queens. I think it's Mount Sinai. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's Mount Sinai, the one that Trump talked about, that has the trailers out front that are, essentially morgues for the most part, where they're stacking, dead bodies in it and all this kind of stuff. And, the TV cameras are all around that hospital. They have a barricade set up in front, with a, what do you call those? A queue, with a queue, right? A metal gated queue that you have to wait in. And so the TV cameras show up and they show all of these people wearing masks that are in desperate need of treatment, need to be tested. Okay. But then when real people go around there with a video camera, not the mainstream media, but real people go to that very hospital, okay, there's nobody in line. There's nobody in the ER, okay? And citizen journalists have been tracking this all around the country. And the video that I saw was made by one Dana Ashley, Luke, on whom I kind of have a bit of a crush just between the two of us, just a little bit, right? But she
it's not between the two of us anymore.
Yeah, well, so anyway, yeah. She compiled all of these citizen videos, just not all of them that she had gotten. I would say probably 10, right? And to a hospital, there was nothing going on at any of them, right? And these are just citizen journalists with their phone cameras saying, hey, where are all the victims? Where are all the sick people? There's nothing happening here. So you got to ask yourself this question, Luke. What in the hell is this all about if we're not really that sick? If these very hospitals, particularly one in Hawaii, where the CEO of the hospital chain came out and said, we have been devastated by all of these victims coming in for treatment. Well, a citizen journalist in Hawaii went to that very hospital, nothing going on. And the CEO of the hospital chain came out and he started asking her, hey, where are all the victims? Where are all the victims? Do you know what she did, Luke? She came and slapped his phone out of his hand. That's what she did, right? And this is what we've shut down our economy for, given up our civil liberties for, right? You know? Now, listen, yeah. I don't deny that there's a problem, okay? I also don't deny that I saw it with my own eyes, dude. Something doesn't make sense here. Something doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? I don't know. Is it a psyop? Who knows, right? Who knows? Is it really a cover up? Who knows? Who knows?
I mean, you know, I don't think it was a cover up. I think there was a legitimate problem. We had a disease that was a problem. It was a problem, and it to some extent still is.
Still is, yeah.
But you know, and so you always have to remember, you know, we made a choice. Well, we didn't, but the United States government made a choice. And anytime you make a choice, you make that choice at the expense of all the other choices available to you. And when you think about, okay, what were the consequences of all of the other choices? It's hard to know, but it also is pretty scary to think about what could have happened. Now, I think like here in Germany, for example, it's time to start loosening up this lockdown, in my opinion, as far as I'm concerned.
Really? Wow. Huh.
Yeah. Huh. Because our numbers have improved like dramatically. So before this, like it was on the rise big time. It was like really quickly gaining momentum and becoming out of control. I mean, we're almost at 100,000 in spite of the lockdowns.
Yeah.
You know, so who knows what we would be at if they hadn't have taken any sort of precautionary measures. What I question, and we're getting ahead of ourselves again, is just the extent to which this lockdown should have occurred. That's what I question. You know, just how imminent is the threat, really? And I don't know. We'll get to that in segment 2, but let's move on for now, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, cool. The only 2 articles I have left was about where they're kind of bots. So we could actually move on to Spygate if you wanted to. It was about WHO and its the World Health Organization and its chief compromised war against Chinese virus has left more than 28,000 dead. And it's, I don't know, not that interesting of an article. But the other one is as media layoffs grow, the industry pleads for urgent relief. So the failing New York Times, which was failing long before Corona, as Trump has so many times pointed out, now they're looking for a bailout.
Yep. Refer to mine and Luke's original premises about this, dear listener, that the media industry, the fake news media, is entirely reliant upon government funding. And now that is laying bare. They're begging the government for taxpayer funds to subside. Yeah. Or exist, continue to exist. What's the word I'm looking for? You know what I'm saying.
Subsist.
You know what I'm saying. Yeah, subsist. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And, there was one other thing I wanted to mention, when Luke was talking about how CNN doesn't want to cover Trump's press conferences. NPR, Luke, I told you in the pre-show call that it was CNN. It was not. It was NPR has filed a request with the FCC to shut down the Trump press conferences. Can you believe this? Taxpayer funded media is asking the government to shut down the president's press conferences. Unbelievable, man.
What do they mean by shut down the press conferences? What does that mean?
They want the FCC to forbid all carriers from carrying the Trump press conference, all media channels. That's what they want to do.
Do they offer any sort of Did they offer any sort of rationale?
The same stuff that CNN said, basically, that it is political propaganda, fake news, all of this kind of stuff, which it's not. It's not, you know. I tell you something, Luke and I always do NPR voice because in some regard, we do have some respect for NPR in a way. Okay. In a way. But in another way, they are shit-lib leftists, right? Just like all media are shit-lib leftists, including Fox News, looking at you as well, right? That are actively operating against the president, right? And it's maddening. But what is heartening right now, Luke, is that President Trump's approval numbers still go up. Do you know what this means? This means that people are starting to get what a bunch of crap all of this is from the leftist media. They're really beginning to show their ass in a very easy to understand way. And this is no better exemplified than by what Nancy Pelosi did this week by creating the committee, the bipartisan committee to investigate the distribution of the bailout funds, the support funds from the government. We just want to make sure that because President Trump is so corrupt, we just want to make sure that this money goes to the right places. And, it's disgusting. They're setting up another impeachment based on this, right? You think the American people are going to buy that? Not at 61% approval. They're not. Sorry, bro. It's not going to happen for you. Try as you may. It's not going to work out. So,
man, I'm glad you brought that up. You brought up something that I had escaped my show prep, but that we should talk about is all the shit that Schumer and Pelosi and Shifty Schiff, how they're all coming out. They're setting up another investigation of Trump's response to all of this.
Yes, they are.
They're already telescoping their behavior. They're already doing it.
Telegraphing, yeah.
Telegraphing, yes, yeah.
They are. Yeah. We already know the playbook. It's going to be Russia, impeach. It's going to be the same playbook, the exact same playbook. So when the dust starts to clear, then they're going to launch an investigation that the reason all this happened was precisely because of Trump. Yeah.
And this is why they need the media to blow it up into something bigger than what it perhaps really is because the bigger that this fiasco is, the more the media covers it, the more that the lockdown happens, the more people who lose their jobs, the more businesses that close, the better off the left is. This is, again, we've hit this so many times, but it's amazing, really, how it always plays out the same way. The more, because of the left's, frankly, evil premises, which guide their ideology, it's necessarily always the case that the more destruction that we have, the worse off people are, the better the left's position is.
Yeah.
Their whole political philosophy hinges on that of destruction, destitution, poverty, damage, subsistence. I mean, it's just all of it hinges on destruction and destitution.
Yep.
All the time.
Yep.
Climate change hinges on this. This investigation hinges on this. They're secretly over in the corner praying for coffins. That's what they want.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. It's absolutely true. Absolutely true. And that's why Luke and I are here, dear listener, to expose this. That's what we want more than anything else. That's our job, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on, dude.
All right. Before I get triggered, man.
Spygate?
Yeah, let's hit Spygate real quick. So,
let's hit Spygate and then we're going to take a break. And then I can't wait for segment 2 because segment 2 is going to be more relaxed and kind of more white pilling and fun and interesting stuff. Yeah, for sure. So, all right, dear listener, there has been a lot going on with Spygate. Okay. And just when you thought that this would go away, that even the Kung Flu would cover up, that it would totally memory hole Spygate. It is right back with a vengeance starting just last night. I've got 2 Washington Examiner pieces, both by Jerry Dunleavy. I'm just going to lay out some basic facts here at first, dear listener, and then Luke and I are going to spin yarns from those facts, and you'll see what we're talking about once we get there. I want to take this piece from the lead called Jim Jordan and Lindsey Graham seek DOJ watchdog testimony on new FISA abuse report. Now, the reason I chose this piece is because it contains everything, right? This is a Rosetta Stone of the whole story about what's going on with Spygate, minus a couple of other facts, okay?
I'm going to take it from the lead. It goes thus. Leading Republicans in the House and Senate called for Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz to testify about his new Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act report. Senate Judiciary Chairman Lindsey Graham of South Carolina asked the DOJ watchdog to appear before his panel to discuss his new report, just like he did for a much longer but more narrowly focused FISA report in December. Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio, the ranking member on the Democrat-led House Judiciary Committee, again urged Chairman Jerry Nadler of New York to invite Horowitz to testify, which he declined to do after last year's report. Quote, the OIG Management Advisory warned FBI Director Christopher Wray of rampant noncompliance with Woods procedures, Jordan told Nadler in a letter on Tuesday. Because of the pervasiveness and seriousness of the FISA application deficiencies and pending reauthorization of FISA, we renew our request that you invite IG Horowitz to testify at a public hearing promptly. Horowitz's preliminary audit released Tuesday focused narrowly on the Bureau's requirement to create and maintain an accuracy subfile known as a, quote, Woods file to ensure that factual assertions in FISA applications were backed up by demonstrable evidence. FBI policy requires the Woods file to contain supporting documentation for every factual assertion in a FISA application. Quote, we believe, this is quoting IG Horowitz in a letter that he wrote to Christopher Wray on Tuesday. Quote, we believe that a deficiency in the FBI's efforts to support the factual statements in FISA applications through its Woods procedures undermines the FBI's ability to achieve its scrupulously accurate standard for FISA applications, Horowitz concluded. Dang. I'm going to skip down a few paragraphs. On Tuesday, the DOJ watchdog revealed that for 4 of the 29 applications his team reviews, quote, the FBI either has been unable to locate the Woods file that was prepared at the time of the application or that, quote, FBI personnel suggested a Woods file was not completed. Dear listener, okay, 4 out of 29. I wonder who these 4 were. Was it Carter Page? Was it George Papadopoulos? Was it Michael Flynn? Who was it? I guarantee you those 4 cases did not have Woods files with them. Now, what this means, dear listener, when you go to a FISA court and you're saying we need to undercover surveil an American citizen, all of their communications because of this reason, because of this reason, because of this reason, for every fact you assert to a FISA judge in order to get a FISA warrant, you have to have a Woods file that documents exactly that fact. 4 out of 29 cases. They only reviewed 29 cases, and 4 of them did not have that documentation. Absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Okay. Let me see. Let me get to another Examiner piece here. This one also is by Jerry Dunleavy. FISA court issues rare order to DOJ FBI following scathing watchdog review. I'm going to take it from the lead. It goes thus. DOJ Inspector Michael Horowitz said on Wednesday faced tough questioning from lawmakers on the Senate Judiciary Committee about his nearly 500-page report examining the Russia investigation. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court issued a rare order Tuesday to the FBI and Department of Justice demanding they spell out a series of planned reforms following a damning report from the DOJ's Inspector General that scrutinized surveillance of a former aide to President Donald Trump's campaign. That would be Carter Page. Okay? That's what that is. Now, dear listener, there is a little bit of context here that matters. Okay? And this is from December 2019. I've got a Gateway Pundit piece here. I just want to remind you here real quick. Where is it? It's right here. Okay. Oh, I lost the piece, Luke. Dang it. Well, basically what happened is that in December of 2019, the FISA court ordered the DOJ, hey, you need to review your procedures for establishing Woods files and for your FISA applications, and you need to report to us by, what was it? I think the first deadline was January 31st. Okay. Well, the DOJ punted. They asked for more time. They extended the deadline, I think, to somewhere around February 14th. I think it was Valentine's Day. That report from the DOJ back to the FISA court from December of 2019 has not happened yet. It has not happened. Okay? So you've got the FISA court already telling the DOJ and the FBI, yo, you need to get your shit together and you need to report to us right now about exactly how you're going to do it going forward. They have not done that yet. Okay? Nonetheless, Luke, the woods are on fire, man. The building is burning down right now, and people are going to start jumping out of this building. You believe that? You absolutely believe that. So I'm going to take a breath right here. What do you think about it so far, man? What's your take on it? I've got more information, but what do you think so far?
It's apparent to me. It's obvious that this whole Spygate thing is a slow burn.
Yeah,
and
it is.
I have been resting on the premise for months now, probably more than a year now, that I'll believe it when I see heads roll.
Yeah. I
haven't seen any yet, but who knows what Bill Barr and John Durham, who knows what they're up to behind the scenes. But I'm just waiting on Durham. That's it.
Yeah. Hashtag me too. Yeah. All eyes are on you, John Bull Durham. All eyes are on you right now. That said, Luke, they have promised that his investigation would be completed by late spring, early summer. We're getting kind of into the middle of spring at this point in time. You know what I mean? We're a good 25% of the way into spring, right? So it's that. Well, again, I don't know what to expect from John Bull Durham because he's been so quiet, right? So is Huber in Utah. But Huber did tweet out last week, and I had it in the show prep, and we just didn't have time to get to it. His investigation is still ongoing. It's not like Huber hasn't been doing anything. He's been investigating Spygate and the Clintons also, right? So again, I don't know if these will be reports because these guys are prosecutors, man. Huber and John Bull Durham are prosecutors. Is it going to be a report or is it just going to be indictments? Indict. Here you go. Everybody indicted. Who knows? Or will they shit the bed on it? Pardon my French, dear listener, or will they just shit the bed? If they do, dang. It may be time for pitchforks at that point in time, Luke. You know what I'm saying? It may be time. So
yeah, because at that point we'll have a FISA court. And remember, dear listener, I mean, the FISA court, this is not like some normal court where, it's like a police wanting to go submit a warrant to surveil a suspect. This is sort of like, I mean, at this point, they can surveil anybody they want with impunity, with no reason, complete access to phone records, everything. Yes. So this is a big deal. This is a huge civil liberties deal right now.
It is. And I'm glad you said that, Luke, because, let's not personify this in the form of the president, because half the country, well, no, I'm going to say about probably a third of the country at this point in time are just filled with blind rage for Donald Trump. So let's just take it apart. Okay. Let's just say that it's not about Donald Trump. Okay. That means, or actually, I take that back, Luke. Let's say that it's about Donald Trump. And it goes like this, dear listener. And Luke and I have said it thousands of times in these shows. Even though we've only done 76 shows now, we've said it thousands of times. You believe that? Go back and listen. You can count them. If they can do it to Donald Trump, they can do it. They can damn sure do it to you, dear listener. They can do it to anybody. They can do it to anybody. They can do it to the president of the United States. Dang. It's staggering. Yeah. It's staggering, man.
Yeah, they can do it to anybody. So they could do it to Ben Shapiro for having his opinions. He could do it to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could find ourselves in hot water because we're being surveilled or something or set up somehow. This is this is a serious deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. So, all right, Luke, I'm going to go on. I'm going to get back to some facts here real quick.
Go for it.
So, all right. So I've got a conservative treehouse piece here that is God tier. The title of it is President Trump removes coup plotter ICIG Michael Atkinson, effective 30 days from today. DC media conscripts go bananas. Well said, Sundance. That's good. So ICIG is Intelligence Community Inspector General. That's who Michael Atkinson was. Okay. And Trump let him go last night. Okay. And sure enough, exactly like Sundance just said, the left flew into a blind rage about it, right? Because they're in some trouble, dear listener. They're in some trouble, right? And so let me just take it from the lead. It goes thus. The recent IG report that outlines the IG report that Luke and I were just talking about in the previous segment or bit of this segment, okay? The Horowitz report where he went and wrote Christopher Wray, yo, you need to, we don't think you're following Woods procedures here to get FISA warrants, right? We see some egregious, quote unquote mistakes. They're not mistakes, they're on purposes, but you don't understand what I'm saying. It has fallen out in this way. Trump fired Michael Atkinson, right? There was fallout from that IG report, okay? Now, let me go back to the piece. The recent IG report that outlines Atkinson's gross incompetence in the FISA scandal vis-a-vis the 42 DOJ NSD accuracy reviews is the atomic shield against the political narrative. President Trump has sent a letter to Congress giving them 30 days advance notice and informing them of the removal of Intelligence Community Inspector General Michael Atkinson. The necessary, albeit politically controversial move comes about 2 months after President Trump assigned Rick Grinnell to lead the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Grinnell is ultimately the acting boss of the overall intelligence community. It is likely D&I Grinnell provided some key insight into the sketchy background activity in and around Atkinson's office and the overall intelligence apparatus writ large. God tier. Rick Grinnell is God tier, dear listener. But he's only acting. He's like the mooch, right? When the mooch came in for Sean Spicer to fill in for a little bit, that's what Rick Grinnell is right here. I continue with the piece. Additionally, former Congressman Mark Meadows, mine and Luke's hero, is now President Trump's chief of staff. And Meadows has been a critic of those within the intelligence apparatus who attempted a soft coup twice, once by special counsel, the Russia investigation with Robert Mueller, and once by impeachment, the Ukraine investigation using CIA operative Eric Charamella and NSC operative Alexander Vindman. I'm going to skip down a couple paragraphs. Currently, former CIA Director John Brennan is under investigation for his role in the FBI spy operations against the Trump campaign and administration. Brennan is being investigated by U.S. Attorney John Bull Durham, an assignment from AG William Barr. Skip down one paragraph. This is where it gets really fascinating, dear listener. Okay, you got to check this out. Here we go. Intelligence Committee member John Ratcliffe has been nominated for the permanent OD&I role, but his nomination has not been taken up by corrupt Senate Select Committee on Intelligence SSCI Chairman Richard Burr. Ironically, Senator Burr is now under investigation for insider trading related to his divestiture of Wall Street investments prior to the financial collapse due to the coronavirus pandemic. And that is absolutely true, dear listener. This is something that Luke and I have not talked about. It's been on our roadmap, but we've had too much kung flu stuff and other business to talk about. But there are 4 Congress people in some deep doo-doo right now, okay? I'm going to read a Sarah Carter tweet from March 20th. It goes thus. According to financial disclosures, Senators Kelly Loeffler, Republican Georgia, James Inhofe, Republican Oklahoma, Dianne Feinstein, Democrat California, and surprise, surprise, Richard Burr, Republican North Carolina, each sold stocks within days of the Senate holding a classified briefing on January 24th regarding the Kung flu. Sarah Carter didn't say the Kung flu. I'm just trying to color the picture here. That's all, So, all right, now let's get back to this other piece. Okay. So you wonder why John Ratcliffe has not had any hearings to become the OD&I. It's because of this dirty son of a bitch, Senator Richard Burr. That's why. This one that has been committing fraud and felonies in the form of insider trading. Okay. And it's been exposed everywhere. Judge Janine did a fantastic job 2 weeks ago of covering that. Boy, she was mad, man. It was the judge at her finest. Anyway, let me get back to this piece. Additionally, since our original research into ICIG, Atkinson revealed he was part of a corrupt deep state effort to cover his own involvement during the FBI operation against candidate Trump, there have been some rather interesting additional discoveries. The key to understanding the corrupt endeavor behind the fraudulent whistleblower complaint doesn't actually originate with the ICIG Atkinson. The key person is former head of the DOJ National Security Division, one Mary McCord. It is very safe to say that Mary McCord and Michael Atkinson have a working relationship from their time together in 2016 and 2017 at the DOJ NSD. Atkinson was Mary McCord's senior legal counsel. Essentially, he was her lawyer. Skip down a few paragraphs. This is the key. Mary McCord joined the House effort to impeach President Trump, as noted in this article from Politico. I think people do see that this is a critical time in our history, said Mary McCord, a former DOJ official who helped oversee the FBI's probe into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election, and now is listed as a top outside counsel for the House in key legal fights tied to the impeachment trial. Quote, we see a breakdown of the whole rule of law. We see the breakdown in adherence to the Constitution and also constitutional values. Now, the context of that sentence, it kind of comes out of left field because Politico, they kind of do that sometimes. This is Mary McCord saying that about President Trump, okay? That's not Sundance at Conservative Treehouse saying that about these leftists who are now pretty much busted, man. They're pretty much busted, okay? That is her accusing President Trump about it. So what Sundance has just done is proven a link between, number one, Michael Horowitz. Number two, the firing of ICIG Atkinson. Number three, tying that to Mary McCord. And number four, without saying it, tying it directly to Adam Schiff in the impeachment scam. This is good, dear listener. This is good. Very good. And I just want to say, Sundance, you're loquacious, right? You're sometimes a little excessively verbose, but you always knock it out of the park, Sundance. My highest compliments. So you see what's going on here, Luke. It's like we've always said. That's it. These aren't individual scandals. This is one big, dirty, corrupt scandal that is all interlinked, all of it. And I guarantee you this, Luke. Let me double down on that, okay? We are going to find out when they do this investigation into President Trump's administration of the Corona bailout to the American citizens. We're going to find all of this dirty kind of stuff involved with that investigation as well. I promise you. They can't help themselves, dude. They can't help themselves. It's all about regaining power. That's it. Nothing else. No, that's too cliche. That's what everybody else says about regaining power. No, dear listener, it is about ruling over you, ruling over the HSP boys. That's what it's about. Lording over you, excluding themselves from this socialist dystopia that they want to create and ruling over us as an oligarchical class. That's what it is. That's exactly what Luke was saying in that previous segment about the Kung Flu.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you could sum it up for dear listener and me.
Okay.
A couple of sentences. If you could sum it up, how would you describe this whole happening? Because that was a good detailed analysis. I thought that was really good, and I was following you for all of it. But the thing is, and they do this on purpose. They have to make all of this so convoluted and complex that people throw up their hands and go, to hell with it. I can't understand this. Yes. So if it's possible, distill this for the listener into 3 or 4 sentences.
Absolutely.
How could you do that?
Yeah. My pleasure, man. I'm happy to do it. Okay. This week on Tuesday, IG Horowitz wrote a letter to Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, saying, hey, we've seen some Woods procedure violations here in these FISA warrants that you had. Okay. It's blatant fraud. Okay. That caused a ripple effect. The FISA court came out and admonished the DOJ and the FBI, and they literally questioned, okay, because this is so fraudulent, are these warrants even valid? Because you lied to us, DOJ and FBI, you lied to us, okay? That ripple caused further fallout, where Donald Trump fired ICIG Atkinson.
Got it. Okay. I didn't. Yeah. Okay. Now I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So by ICIG Atkinson being fired, light has been shined on the fact that he worked with one Mary McCord, who was basically Adam Schiff's right-hand man in the impeachment trial, in the Ukraine investigation. So that's it. 5 data points tied together, right? All one and the same, really.
Yeah.
When you get right down to it. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's great, man. That's a win. And we're winning.
Yeah, it's a win. Yeah, we're winning. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. We are.
And we also should probably consider as a culture revising the term right-hand man, because that is not inclusive of non-binary genders.
My bad.
Right-hand zier.
Right-hand zier. Absolutely, man. Yeah, my bad. What am I thinking, man? I'm so so rude, man. I'm so politically incorrect. Dang.
Yeah.
So
unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, dude, that whole bit was good, except for that one.
Chinese government.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's all good, except for that one part.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, dude. Are we break now?
Yeah, we break now, man. That was a gallop. Yeah, I need to stop and drink some water and,
how we did that in 45 minutes is beyond me. But
yes. Yeah.
We're getting better, I guess.
I suppose, man. We're getting faster. That's for sure. So yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Let's break now. You ready? You ready for it?
Let's do it, dude.
All right. This is a 5-minute audio clip. Can you do it in 5? I think I can do it in 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And before we break, dear listener, don't forget to share on Facebook. Find us on Facebook, Zero Gravity Med. Same thing on Twitter. Dude, I have your intro memorized, by the way. Find us on YouTube at our God Tier Zero Gravity logo. Facebook, Twitter. Follow us. Subscribe on YouTube. We're doing live streams with the Shoe Bros now. Trying to do something every Friday night. We brought back Friday Night Comfy Post. We didn't even announce that.
Friday Night Comfy Post is great again. Yes. Yeah.
So, don't forget to like, share, subscribe on all the platforms, namely YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. And I'll let you take us into break. Russ.
All right. So, dear listener, we got a 5-minute clip here of Tucker Carlson. And I've got to tell you, this has been, I have never seen Tucker like this. Well, not never. He used to be like this all the time. But this weekend, Tucker Carlson has just been fabulous, Luke. Luke, I got to tell you something. I am just about ready for Tucker to run for president in 2024. And if he does, I think I'm going to support him. I think so. Even over Ted Cruz.
Dude, I would know you would support him.
Mm-hmm.
You're a fanboy.
Yeah, I am a fanboy. But dude, he's just been knocking it out of the park this week. And dear listener, he happened to really get all over China's ass this week. All week, he was all over China's ass about the Kung Flu, right? And in this piece, it was his Tuesday night show. It was an absolute masterstroke. We hope you enjoy it. Take some rest, drink some water. Luke and I are going to kind of slow down the pace in segment 2. Segment 1 was a barn burner. We're going to slow it down a little bit. But meanwhile, go ahead and rest up, catch your breath, and Luke and I will be back at you before you know it.
On February 6, scientists from the South China University of Technology uploaded a paper on the origins of coronavirus. Where did it come from? Well, this offers some clue. At the time, the official death toll in China from the coronavirus was 564. The paper made a number of notable observations and claims that are worth knowing about, and that's why we're telling you. We want to be clear that we're not endorsing any of these conclusions. We haven't independently confirmed them. We can't. But you should keep in mind as you hear this that these findings come from Chinese scientists who work for a university that is controlled by the Chinese government. So whatever else they are, the views you're about to hear are probably not racist anti-Chinese propaganda. Here's what the paper says. First, the scientists confirm what scientists around the world have said they believe. The virus most likely came from an animal known as the intermediate horseshoe bat. Here's the striking thing. There are no known colonies of this bat within 900 kilometers of Wuhan, nor is there any evidence that they were sold in the Wuhan wet market, despite many claims in the American media to the contrary, including on this show, by the way. Last night, we did a segment on wet markets, the one in Wuhan included, and suggested that this bat was sold there. But let's be clear. The only actual analysis of that question that we're aware of is in this paper. These scientists interviewed almost 60 people, 59 of them, who frequented the Wuhan wet market. They confirmed there were no horseshoe bats for sale there, period. So that raises the question, where did the virus-carrying bats come from? And the paper says this, quote, "We screened the area around the market and identified 2 laboratories conducting research on bat coronavirus. Within a few hundred yards of the wet market was something called the Wuhan Center for Disease Control and Prevention. According to public reports, the center used intermediate horseshoe bats for research. Then about 7 miles away was another facility. This one was called the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The Virology Institute also conducted research on intermediate horseshoe bats, the ones that were not sold at the wet market. South China University scientists concluded that the coronavirus pandemic, the one that people are dying from here, likely came from one of these 2 government labs in Wuhan. They noticed that a scientist at the Wuhan Center for Disease Control and Prevention had been exposed to the blood and urine of horseshoe bats. They also suggested that infected tissue samples from research animals may have wound up in the Wuhan wet market. And they ended the paper this way, quote, "The killer coronavirus probably originated from a laboratory in Wuhan. Safety levels may need to be reinforced in high-risk biohazardous laboratories. Regulations may be taken to relocate these laboratories far away from city centers and other densely populated places." End quote. How's that for interesting? Now, this paper has been online for nearly 2 months, and so far it has been virtually ignored in this country. Almost nobody in American journalism has dared to write about it. The few who have were immediately attacked as dangerous conspiracy theorists. Instead of assessing what seemed like the rational conclusions presented in the Chinese paper, there was a spate of American news stories and academic research designed to show that the coronavirus absolutely could not have been engineered in a Chinese lab. They sounded supremely confident of that. But do they really know it? And the answer is no, they don't. As a factual matter, it is impossible for Western scientists to settle the question either way. So instead of doing that or admitting that, they amped up the rhetoric, hoping that you wouldn't notice the difference. A post on the National Institutes of Health website, written by NIH Director Francis Collins himself, dismisses any such speculation as, quote, outrageous. Keep in mind, NIH is supposed to be keeping you safe from diseases like this one, not running political interference for hostile foreign governments. This is how they're spending their time as Americans die in the middle of a global pandemic. And still, no one addressed the substance of the claims. The South China University paper concludes that the virus probably escaped accidentally from a lab in Wuhan. It said not one word about bioweapons. Yet the NIH and USA Today and countless other outlets have devoted thousands of words to scolding you for thinking the virus may have been a form of biological warfare. Notice that's a totally different claim than the one made in the paper. And that's not accidental. One of the surest signs that people are lying to you is when they answer questions you didn't ask. And that's exactly what the professional class is doing with this story. And they're doing it on many fronts. They're lying to you. They're claiming to know things they don't know. They're dismissing the obvious as impossible. They're blaming you for their failures. And the media are helping them do it. The stakes are too high to let them continue this way. So no matter what, stay skeptical as you assess the world. Remain rational. Gather your own evidence and come to your own conclusions. You shouldn't have to do that. You ought to be able to trust the people in charge, but you can't.
Welcome back to HSP episode number 76, dear listener. Before we continue, be sure to like, share, subscribe our content on YouTube. You can just search Zero Gravity Media, look for our circular logo with the horizontal bar in it, which Russ describes as God tier. Find us on Facebook at Zero Gravity Med. Find us on Twitter at Zero Gravity Med. Follow us, like, share, subscribe. We would very much appreciate it. Yeah, Russ, Tucker was on in that segment.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was, man. It was a masterpiece. Absolute masterpiece. Every segment he did this week was just God tier.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah. I'm glad you liked it, man. Good.
Yeah,
Makes me happy. Yeah.
I had to jump up for a couple minutes, but I heard most of it.
Good, man. Would you vote for Tucker in 2024? You called him a Bill Clinton Democrat at one time.
Well, he's gotten better, I must say. But
okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, he's got some positions that I definitely find questionable, and I definitely don't agree with. But by and large, I like him. Yeah, I mean, it depends on who he'd be running against in the primaries. If he's running against like basically anybody from the Freedom Caucus and also Ted Cruz, then absolutely not. I would vote for anybody in the Freedom Caucus over Tucker. But if it's like Tucker versus, oh gosh, who are some of the other candidates in the 2016 primaries?
Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio.
Yeah, if it's like between Tucker and Marco Rubio, yeah, Tucker, 100%.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The Freedom Caucus would be the only people I'd vote over Tucker.
Yeah. Cool, man. Cool. You know, I think the real question is, we can mean it as hard as we want to, but as things stand right now, I don't ever see Tucker running for president. I just don't see that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't either. He doesn't strike me as like and not that he's not presidential, but he just doesn't strike me as the type that'd be interested in that, dude. He's got a good thing going right now, you know?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah,
I just don't see it, but that would be interesting if he did. That would be,
yeah, it would.
That's one thing. Sure would. You know, this is an effect that Trump has had, is that you have all these people who wouldn't have normally been qualified in the eyes of the American people running for presidency, you see all these people coming out now considering a run.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Political experience is no longer a requirement. It's a liability.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, and I really do believe that at this point.
Yeah.
Unless you're Freedom Caucus. Those are like the only people that I really trust.
Straight up. Yep.
You know,
Hashtag
Louis
me too.
Gohmert, Mark Meadows, Matt
Gaetz.
Yeah, Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan. This cadre of politicians are the only people I trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
And thankfully, again, as we've detailed, Trump has surrounded himself with those guys.
Yes, indeed. He has. Yeah. They have gravitated to one another like static electricity on Lent, dear listener. They really have. And it's God tier. We've talked about this in previous episodes, probably around, I don't know, Luke, when did you call the Tea Party connection? I think that was around episode 67, something like
around
that.
There. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because the Tea Party was a great movement. And the Freedom Caucus is a manifestation of the Tea Party. They are the concrete political manifestation of the Tea Party. That's the Freedom Caucus.
Yes, indeed.
So anybody in the Freedom Caucus, you can get behind, dear listener.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, do you want to move on then?
Yeah, let's do it, bro.
All right, cool. So I've got an article here from the Epoch Times. Others have called it the Epic Times. I think you call it the Epoch
I say the
Times.
Epoch Times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? I call it the Epoch Times because you pronounce Epoch. Am I wrong in that? Or
I don't think so, man. I think Epoch and Apoc are both correct. I think Epic is wrong. That's just my heretofore understanding. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I've got an article that a listener sent to me over email with some commentary asking my thoughts on it. And it was an interesting article. It's called Our Federalist Movement. It's not terribly long, but I'm not going to read all of it. I've highlighted a bunch of it. So I'll try and read through this as quickly as I can. But unfortunately, it's well enough written such that I can't isolate. I can't clip out of context. So it's got to, build up. So the advocates for the proposed constitution, referred to as the Federalists, argued for a stronger central government with powers enough to be effective in the core responsibilities of the government. Okay, so they're drawing back on history, back to Federalists and Anti-Federalists. And if you haven't read the Federalist Papers, I'd recommend you do that, dear listener.
Absolutely, yeah.
The opponents, often called the Anti-Federalists, feared centralized power and advocated for a continually weak central government, favoring public authority to be wielded by the state governments who were closer to the people with more knowledge of local circumstances. Power exercised locally would be safer and more appropriate to the situation on the ground, they argued. The anti-federalist elements are alive and well in our decentralized response. State governors are making decisions for their people with the best local knowledge available to them. The Trump administration is encouraging states to take the lead in caring for the health and safety of their citizens as we intended by the structure of federalism built into the Constitution. By the way, dear listener, the author is comparing and contrasting this in the context of Trump's response to Corona. As we move forward through these perilous times, and I'm skipping like tons of paragraphs in between all these. As we move forward through these perilous times, it's important that we recognize the ingenious balance at the heart of our constitutional system. There are those calling for ever more centralized responses and ever more centralized control. In nearly every press conference, at least one reporter asks why the federal government hasn't made its basic recommendations into nationwide orders. And then the author goes into, we're almost finished here, goes into three core principles they assert that inform our Constitution. So first, decisions are made by private citizens on the free market during most circumstances. When pundits demand that the president engage the power of government to force corporations to produce products, even though the administration gives evidence that private companies are voluntarily stepping up, they have lost track of this essential value. Most of the time, the free market works. Free decisions will lead to necessary products being produced and to them being distributed where they are most needed. Only when the market and freedom fail should the government step in with force. Oh, that triggers me, Russ.
I know, bro. It was hard for me to hear you even read that.
Yeah. So, and just again, I'm telegraphing our moves here. This is what I'm going to come back to because most of the rest of this I pretty much agree with. Second, when government decisions need to be made, they should be made with the level that has the most local information and is in most direct contact with the people affected. This is the structure built into the system. Health and safety are primarily the responsibility of the states. The governors have stepped up and are leading with strength and resolve. Only out of absolute necessity should the administration make edicts for the entire nation. Third, this is one of those moments in national life when Hamilton's wisdom, Alexander Hamilton, that is, wisdom becomes apparent. It's in times like these, we need energy in the executive to coordinate the natural resources and act decisively. We must be careful on this one, with executive power being so prone to abuse, and must ensure that whatever extraordinary actions are taken during such a crisis do not become routine. What say you about that, Russ?
I agree with most of it. And I hearken back to that speech that William Barr gave at the conservative. It was some lawyer society. We played some of it. It was somewhere in the late 50s, right? Back in the ancient history of HSP, where he talked about he did not like the compromise of executive power. He believed in the power of a strong executive. And now, in these times of Kung Flu, we see exactly why that power should never be compromised. Okay. Now, should it be abused? No. The way Obama abused it, generally, constantly, no, it shouldn't. Right. But that power should be maintained. So I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked this article. So dear listener, who sent this to me, thank you for sending this. I love these kinds of articles. Because I love it when they juxtapose our current reality with history, and it's a really good, interesting article. But I definitely take issue with the first quote unquote core principle that inform our Constitution. Specifically when they say most of the time the free market works. Free decisions will lead to necessary products being produced and to them being distributed where they are most needed. Only when the market and freedom fail should the government step in with force. So let's pick this as an exercise. Let's pick this apart. What are you laughing about?
I can't wait, dude. Do it. That's all.
I mean, I already take issue. It says most of the time the free market works. Okay. What does that mean? It works. So the question becomes, what are we trying to accomplish here? Like, what is the purpose of government? Was the purpose of government to find an economic system that works and then implement it? No, absolutely not. The purpose of government is to protect rights. That's it. It's not to solve societal problems. It's not to make sure there's toilet paper in the stores. It's not to make sure, it's not to find some economic system that quote unquote works. And here's why. And here's why when you cuck on these things, this is how the left wins, is you use language like this, works. Because the left goes, well, it works for the stuff you want. Doesn't work for our ends.
Right.
Hashtag not my means. That's what they would say.
Right.
So they would say, no, it actually doesn't work because look at this. Look at the wealth disparity. Look at all the poor people. We can't afford healthcare. We can't do this. We can't do that. There's so much. Oh, it's so immoral. It doesn't work. That's all they would say. If you operate on this premise that we need to just find something that quote unquote works, you have just lost the argument entirely. You may as well have not even shown up because you're just going to get embarrassed if this is the way you think. And this is your line of argumentation, is that free markets work. No, the truth is that the purpose of the government is to protect rights, individual rights. And free markets, they just are. They're not a tool. They're not an ideal. They just are. They're just a state of being free. That's all free markets are. So you can't argue from this, do they work or not? And most of the time they do. And it's when they don't and freedom fails. Freedom does not fail. Freedom is a state of being that is what we should be after. The purpose of government is to ensure that we are free. People fail. Freedom doesn't fail. People fail. And they fail all the time. Right. I've failed many times throughout my life, People fail. Freedom does not fail. Freedom is just a thing. It's just an idea. It's a concept. It doesn't fail. People can fail. And hopefully they learn. To the extent that they do, they fail less. And they become more successful as a result under freedom. But that doesn't mean freedom works. It just means that it's under freedom that we can even live our lives and understand who we are, form an identity, work towards something, become happy. That's That's what freedom is. It's not something that works or doesn't work, or it works most of the time. And then we need some government, and we need a little bit of government intervention over here and a little bit over there and a little bit over here. But most of the time it works. No, you've just lost. You've cucked. You've lost the whole argument to a leftist, because they'll just argue, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for what I want. And then now you've just ensnared yourself into this absurd, ridiculous argument about, well, what you want is bad. I don't even go there. I'm just saying that I just start from it's the moral position. Free markets they don't work. They are moral. Now, it happens to be the case that they work because they're moral, but I'm not worried about them working. I'm worried about what's moral. And being free and having a government which protects rights is the moral thing to do. So this is this.
Okay. Can I play devil's advocate with you?
Sure, man.
Just a little bit. Okay. All right. So let me just ask you a question here. Okay. So I agree with you entirely, completely. Okay. I do see some exceptions to things about free markets, and it goes like this, right? Listen, if we want to outsource iPhone production to China entirely because labor is cheaper, you know what? That's fine. That's fine. As long as they don't install spyware in iPhones and surveil the American public, fine, which they probably do. Okay. But we find ourselves in this situation where we now, after the Kung flu, have learned that 97% of our pharmaceuticals are manufactured in China. China has, in fact, threatened the United States to cut off those pharmaceuticals when we need them most of all. Okay. Is it fair enough to say that it is in the national interest that this market must be protected nationally?
I think the question I would ask is, how did it come to be that 97% of pharmaceuticals are produced in China?
That is the question. I don't have the answer to that. I assume it's labor costs over the last 30 years. I don't know.
I would assert the answer to be exactly this idea that most of the time free markets work. But when does it not work? Oh, we need livable wages. Oh yeah, we can't. We can't have free markets there. We need livable wages. We need some regulations over here because the free market didn't work over there. So we need some regulations. And then over the course of 50 years, all this stuff stacks up and adds up and adds up. And then next thing you know, all your shit's being produced in China because it's now more advantageous for you to relocate your production facility to the other side of the planet than it is to have it next door.
Yes. Yeah, that is a fair point. And again, I assume labor has something to do with it, but since we're talking about regulations, I think FDA regulations are pretty severe. Okay.
Dude, yeah,
that may figure into why our pharmaceuticals are being made in China. Right. So it's a God tier point, man. I get exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get exactly what you're saying.
The reason they're made, the reason they're manufactured, the reason they're produced over in China is because freedom didn't work over here. That's why.
Yeah. Okay. Dude, that's a God tier answer. Thank you. That's God tier.
So, yeah. Controls breed controls. I think what the root issue here is that we are and I see people on the right do this a lot, is that they conflate. I'm not talking to you, Russ. I'm kind of going back here and making another point. Is that I think a lot of people on the right conflate government and markets as being one and the same, that they're just a tool. And free markets are not. I just want to drive this point home. Free markets are not a tool. They just are. If you're using government for its intended purpose, which is to protect rights.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Markets are people interacting for mutual interest. That's what it is. We've detailed it hundreds of times in these hallowed halls, dear listener. That's all it is. It's a free will association of people interacting for mutual benefit. That's it.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
And if as soon as you bring this free market working line of argumentation, again, like the left, they will just agree with you out of hand. They'll just say, what you've done is you've just agreed with all the left premises, and then now you put yourself in the position of having to quibble over the differences. Yeah, and they love that. Right. That's where they win. That's where they thrive, is quibbling over little tiny concretes. All they want you to do is just buy into their premises, and then they'll quibble with you, and they will always win at the end of the day. Don't even buy into their premises. So it's not even about whether it works or not. It just is, because the purpose of the government is to protect rights. And the reason that the purpose of the government is to protect rights is because, and we've detailed this, as human beings, we have to think, to act, to live. And to live qua human, a human being means to live happy. And to live happy, you need to be able to do things like have property, keep the fruits of your labor, all of these basic tenets of our Constitution, keeping what you've produced and not having others get in your way. And you're not allowed to get in others' way. That's the whole purpose of the government. And that's it. Nothing more.
Yep.
And it needs to be as big as it needs to be to do just that. If it needs to be a big government to do that, then fine. I don't think it would. I think it'd be much, much smaller. I know it would be much smaller than we have it today. But
yeah,
that's what the purpose of it is. It's not to intervene when free markets fail. Free markets are they're not a tool. Free markets are not a tool. They just are. So anyways.
Yeah, agreed entirely, man. Agreed entirely. And, because here's another leftist argument, dear listener. Okay.
The Constitution doesn't say anything about capitalism. There's no reason for us we're not constitutionally mandated to live under capitalism.
Right. Okay. Yes, that's true. Okay. Because the government realized, the founders, the founders realized in their creation of this government that if they created the framework, capitalism would exist naturally. That's why they didn't have to define it, right? They had to put rights in check, right? Or guarantee rights, right? Guarantee your rights from your fellow citizens, right? Guarantee fellow citizens' rights from you, and guarantee all of our rights from the government. And in this creation, they realized that free markets would naturally happen. They didn't have to define it. Okay.
Well, yeah. So, and anybody who says that is a complete idiot, because capitalism was a term coined by Marx, who wasn't even alive when the Constitution was written.
The term capitalism, in other words, dear listener, at the drawing up of the Constitution did not exist. It did not exist.
Yeah.
So
what the founders did, they read a bunch of books out of the Enlightenment. They brought a bunch of Enlightenment ideals to the table. They still had some deism and a little bit of religion. They mixed it all together, but leaning heavily towards Enlightenment ideas, protection of rights, Lockean philosophy. And they leaned heavily on that and relied on that, and to the best of their ability, created a government which would recognize and enshrine into law this concept of rights. It just so happened to be the case that Marx then retroactively went and ascribed a term to describe what that is, and that's capitalism.
That's right, man.
So anybody that says, it's not in the Constitution, it's like, do you realize that Marx was not even born when that was written?
Yeah. Yeah, he wasn't born for another, 40 years after the Constitution was written? 50 years? Yeah, about 50 years.
He was born in the early 1800s. Let me look at it. 1818 is when he was born.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, so 20 years. Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah.
So, 30 years. My bad.
Yeah,
30
a little
years.
bit longer, because the Constitution was ratified in 1789. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But, so anyways, I thought that was, dear listener, I appreciate you sending that in. Thank you so much. I love getting ammunition. This stuff gets me fired up. So I like that a lot. I love finding that, and this is a cliche term, but it's true. The devil is in the details, and you use little words like these and don't realize you're buying into your enemy's premises.
Right.
So,
not to mention intrinsically, the term works that you so accurately picked out is directly associated with the term labor. Right?
Yeah. Now
it's words, bro.
Yeah. Now we got mind-body dichotomy up in the house.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, this is a good segue into what is the proper government response to Corona? And I think at this point we should really just say any pandemic.
Yeah.
I've got some ideas jotted down. I can go, but I just went on a long rant, so I can hand it over to you if you have some ideas.
Bring it, man. I'm enjoying it. Yeah, bring it.
All right.
Yeah.
So I thought a lot about this. This is something I've kind of been waiting to pull the trigger on, because let's be honest, dear listener, we're in some muddy water intellectually with this sort of thing. And I've been really racking my brain with, and I follow a bunch of people, a bunch of thinkers that I respect a lot, and I've kind of been whatever about their responses. Not too enthusiastic, but don't disagree either. So maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm sure, hopefully there's people that write in and illuminate some chinks in the armor of this line of argumentation here. But I've thought a lot about this. So what is the proper government response to a pandemic such as this? And the first thing that we need to establish is that there are two categories of fact about the universe, about everything, about reality. Everything can be categorized into one of two categories, or every fact, I should say, specifically can be categorized into one of two things: metaphysical facts and man-made facts. So what are those? A metaphysical fact is a mountain, is a metaphysical. The height of a mountain is a metaphysical fact. The width, the volume, all of these things about this mountain and the fact that that mountain exists are metaphysical facts. In other words, facts which have nothing to do with man and anything he's done. Then man-made facts would be, okay, I'm going to bore a hole through the mountain so we can put a road there. And the fact that there's a road going through this mountain, that's a man-made fact. So there are metaphysical facts and there are man-made facts. And the reason that it's important to understand this is that you do not have a right to be not crushed in a rock slide. That's not the point of rights. The rights do not apply in the context of something like a rock slide or a tsunami or anything like this. Rights only pertain to those facts which are man-made. So in other words, for rights to enter the equation, there has to be a causal link between the actions someone took and the factual impact upon you that those actions created. So does someone have a right not to be infected by a disease? No. But does someone have a right not to be damaged by the negligent actions of others? Yes. So you can already see we are entering some muddy waters here. It's already difficult to think about. So, if someone has if someone has corona, the government, in my opinion, has a responsibility to quarantine that individual and all of those with whom that individual has had contact, right? So contact tracing is what they call it. And there's a lot of other things going on here, such as ignorance as to whether one is infected or not. Does that constitute criminality? These sorts of things. I think that's more like philosophy of law. But basically, in my opinion, the government has a responsibility to test, and they have a responsibility for contact tracing and quarantine, isolation. I've seen some people online calling it test, isolate, track, which basically is the same thing. Now,
horrible acronym, though, if I may say.
Wait, test. What is it? Test, isolate, track. Man, I wish I would have caught that. That's great. I'm all right, dude. Yeah, I'm all on board with that now. I didn't even catch that. That's funny. But okay, so then moving on beyond there, right? We also, there's a lot of other things to deal with, unpack here, like states. Do states have rights, and can a governor shut down the borders? Should restaurants be forced to be closed, and all of this sort of stuff? And so I'll separate this part of it out into two. There's the LARP context and the actual context. Russ, since I'm yakking over here, do you want to explain what a LARP is?
LARP means live action role play, dear listener. We use the term all the time, right? And it means imaginatively acting out a fantastic idea, right? A fantastical, rather, idea. That's all it means, right? Live action role play, right? So like, live D&D games, those are LARP games, right? Renaissance festivals, those are LARP festivals, right? You live action role play. That's what it is. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, and like, these are the classic arguments. Well, in a free society, X, Y, and Z would happen, Well, if we were living in an anarcho-capitalist society, so-and-so, well, in a communist society, blah, blah, blah. This is LARPing. This is intellectual LARPing, because you're pretending to live in some world that we don't live in, okay? So, and, when you're thinking about something like this, you have to delineate between the LARP context and the actual context in which we live. So in a perfect world, LARP context, the government's role would be to protect rights, as we've just detailed. But we also have to consider something else. And Russ, I'm interested on your feedback on this, because I think this is a tricky issue. And it required about 2 weeks to realize that I had to make a reframe in my own head as to the purpose of government, because it's true that the role of the government is to protect rights. But in this context, I think that is a massive oversimplification. So,
okay.
I think that in something like this, the government's role should not be framed as interrupting everyone's lives so as to stop the spread or slow the spread of the disease.
Agreed.
I think that the government's role should be, and perhaps not role, but maybe goal in this sense, should be to ensure everyone's lives are as uninterrupted as possible, while the markets try to figure out how to deal with the disease, which includes the healthcare markets.
Yes.
So so this is, in my opinion, where things like critical masses of potentially infected individuals fanning out into otherwise quote unquote okay areas, we start thinking about this. The government needs to think about, like, okay, we've got this critical mass of people who are infected, and take Manhattan, for example. How do we slow that spread out of that geographic territory such that we can, in other words, buy ourselves time, buy the markets time to figure out how to deal with this problem?
Yes.
I think that's a valid question for a government official to ask his or herself.
Yeah.
And I think over time people would learn that, like, this is part of living within a large city. If a pandemic breaks out, sorry, but you chose to live in a large city, and there's a risk that you take, small risk, but it's a risk nonetheless. It could be a huge risk, but so, and that brings me up to the next point. Like, in my opinion, it's up to each individual to determine his or her, risk versus reward of their activities, So I do think people should be careful, and I do think people should stay home, but I qualify that by saying to the extent that they can, because this is important.
Yeah.
For some people, they're facing financial destitution. This is what we were talking about in segment 1. They're facing financial destitution. I would take Corona over financial destitution. That's just me.
Yeah.
But
your chances of surviving Corona are infinitely greater than surviving financial destitution. Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Or, not merely surviving, but being happy. You get Corona.
Yeah. There you go.
Like, you may survive, but you're going to be poor and living on the streets.
Right.
And they're probably going to get Corona anyway. Now you're poor. Now you're broke, and you're broke and sick. At least be sick, but not broke.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I think it's improper for the government to be forcing businesses to shut down. I think it's ruining lives, perhaps even more lives than they're saving. I don't know. There's no way to know that, but in my opinion, sending individuals into financial destitution. And this is another thing. Is you have to ask, why are they doing this? Why are they having this approach? It's to slow the spread of the disease, but why is it so important for the government to slow the spread of the disease? It's because the healthcare industry has been so hampered. Imagine if we had a real true single payer healthcare. My God, the government, they can't be blamed for that. They'll cast an infinite, they'll let the corpses pile up just as long as their precious single payer healthcare system doesn't fail, because then it failed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the government has been hampering the healthcare industry with regulations, hampering people, to individuals, businesses, hospitals with regulations, taxation, and in as much as the healthcare industry is unprepared and unable to deal with this problem, it lies squarely on the shoulders of our politicians who have for decades been hampering these industries.
Yeah.
So, I had Dan ask me, on what I think about the states. I think states, quote unquote, rights. States don't have rights. Individuals have rights because groups can't have rights. But I think, this is a more tactical and constitutional issue, which I'm not an expert on. But I think if a state government deems a neighboring state's people, and I'm going to qualify this, and I use this word very specifically and deliberately, imminent. If a state's government deems a neighboring state's people to be an imminent threat for any reason, whether it's a disease, whether it's an armed threat, whatever, I don't care. If a state's government deems a neighboring state's people to be an imminent threat to their people by virtue of the certainty that in this case they'll bring the disease, then I think they have a moral obligation to shut down the borders and protect the people in their own state. That's the purpose of borders. It's a fire break.
Absolutely.
Borders are ideological and, if necessary, physical fire breaks.
Absolutely.
What else? Oh yeah, we got the actual context. And by the way, at the beginning when I was talking about like the two different categories of fact, I was bringing that up because it's important. It's clarifying to think like, okay, we're not talking about the disease per se. We're talking about the spread of the disease among individuals. So we're dealing with humans, and that's why this is a rights issue. And I should have clarified that. It just dawned on me that I kind of just jumped from that to something else. But that's the link here is that because we are dealing with it's not the right not to be infected. It's the right to not be damaged by the negligent actions of others.
And I have a couple of thoughts about what you just said. I'm going to interject right here for just 30 seconds if I may.
Good, dude. Okay. Take all the time you want.
Yeah. So I live right outside of Dallas, dear listener. Okay. And in my county, there was a woman who tested positive last Saturday night. I told Luke about this, right? She refused quarantine. Okay. The local authorities did not come take her downtown. Okay. They did not. What ended up happening is that in the marketplace of ideas on Facebook and such, people started posting her photograph, right? So that they were like, okay, it's this bitch right here. Okay. You need to stay away from her. Who knows where she went? Okay. But government failed in this specific case to isolate her. They failed. They allowed her to refuse quarantine. They completely allowed it. And we've seen numerous such cases happen, right? Where, what was it? A MIT professor tested positive, knew he was positive, and still went to all these parties and stuff like that. That's ridiculous. This is where the government should intervene right here.
Exactly.
It is not about taking away their individual rights. It is about protecting your rights from that person in this case, right? And government has failed in many numerous cases in this effect.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, that should even be a criminal issue. If you knowingly chose to take that action. I talked about this a little bit, but I recently listened to a really good lecture series on the Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle, and Aristotle defined a choice responsibility. He defined responsibility as a choice one knowingly and voluntarily chose to take. So if you have corona and you're going around and not adhering to isolation, you are knowingly choose to infect others.
Yes.
And that to me, that constitutes criminality, you know?
Absolutely. It does to me too. That bitch should have been taken downtown, arrested, taken downtown, then moved out of the jail into self-isolation somewhere.
Yeah, totally.
If you're not gonna,
And that's why, man, I love, like, I wish government would think about things in terms of just straight up criminality a lot more than a lot more than policy.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
man.
They're way too focused on policy and not focused nearly enough on like criminal rights violations. I get into arguments. So not anymore because I pick and choose my battles. I don't waste time with people anymore. But you know, if I'm going to have an honest debate with somebody, it's like at least like 10, not 10, but like at least once during the debate, there will be something come up and I'll have to explain why this is a property rights issue. You know, this is something for the legal system to deal with, the court system. This is not a policy decision, you know?
Right.
And such is the case here. They should have said, look, if you know you have this disease and you are not self-isolating, that is a criminal offense because you are knowingly and voluntarily choosing to endanger others.
Yeah.
I mean, hell,
because of my rights. It's against my rights.
Was that her rationale on that?
Yeah, it was quite literally.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean,
I know.
You don't have a right not to be infected, but you also don't have a right to infect others either.
Exactly so.
So, yeah. Let me see. So then the actual context. Okay. So that's the LARP context. The actual context is that the reason the government is doing all this is because of healthcare, their precious healthcare system. My God, we can't let our healthcare system fail. Look how regulated it is. We'll get blamed for that. Okay, everybody, you're all fired, laid off, furloughed. Nobody can go to work because we can't let our healthcare system fail.
Right.
You know? And So in my opinion, in the actual context, there is an emergency here, but the emergency is the one the government created with taxes and regulations, excessive taxes and excessive regulations. And in my opinion, the only real emergency here is the government itself. Because if the healthcare industry were making incredible amounts of profits and becoming incredibly wealthy and investing in things, and we were incredibly wealthy and not hampered by decades of regulations and taxation, something like this would be, I don't know, it would be a non-issue, but it most certainly wouldn't constitute shutting down the majority of the economy.
Right.
I don't know about the majority of the economy is shut down, but a large portion of it is shut down such that there's not a single person. There's very few. I mean, you've got to be living out in the forest in Montana to not be impacted by this in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
So that's my take on proper government response. I don't know. Was that too long, Russ? Was that too convoluted?
No, not at all, man. I enjoyed it very much, man. I wrote down a couple thoughts. One was about that woman who was allowed to go free. Failure of government right there, pure and simple. I do want to say, just to kind of double down on your point right now, I don't know if there is political. Actually, yeah, I do. I do know that there is political operation going on here because of the way our healthcare industry in the United States works right now. There is a very legitimate concern that it could fail. Okay.
Yeah.
According to Andrew Cuomo, it is failing in New York City. According to him. Now, do I believe him? No. But according to him, it is. Okay. This could end up becoming a winning issue for somebody like Bernie Sanders. Straight up.
I thought about Bernie Sanders since we.
Yeah. So there is some political risk going on right now for the president.
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line. There is real political risk.
And that, Trump should be harping on this. Trump should be heralding the deregulations that they've done. I mean, I'm saying it's
exactly
the government's the emergency. Yeah. But it's the emergency in spite of the good things that Trump has done.
Right.
So Trump should be heralding this, saying like, look, we would be in so much better of a position if from day one doctors could cross state lines.
Right.
We wouldn't have needed to relocate a giant boat, which because of ironically regulations nobody's on, no patients are on.
Right. It's true.
They relocated this 1,000-bed boat up to New York from Virginia. The Comfort, the United States Naval Health. Yeah, that's something Comfort.
Yeah, it's the Comfort, and the Mercy is off of the coast of Los Angeles now.
They relocated this boat, and then lo and behold, because of regulations, they have like 26 patients as of I think yesterday.
That's exactly right, man.
Trump should be He should be. I'm doing everything I can, yet I'm being stopped at every step of the way by these ridiculous regulations. And the right, right should be holding this up on a banner. What they're doing.
Yeah.
So, I think that's it. There was like one other thing. Oh yeah. I wanted to also qualify this whole imminence thing because to me, that's the main thing is imminence. And our boy down in Houston helped me tease out what I really mean when I say that, which is a combination of high likelihood and immediate time frame. Plus, high likelihood, immediate time frame, and consequences that you care about. All those things together equals imminence.
That's a God tier point. Hey, man, he's so smart. I swear to God, he is so smart, man. So,
yeah,
too true.
So, I mean, if you got high likelihood of spread of the disease, plus an immediate time, and it's going to happen immediately. It's on your doorstep where it's already there. And it's going to have high consequences. Yeah, you take action. And it doesn't matter if we're not talking about a disease. We're not talking about guns. We're talking about people. And that's my whole point in delineating between these two facts about reality, man-made facts and metaphysical facts. We're not worried about the disease. We're about people spreading the disease. So we're worried about the people involved.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So Corona doesn't kill people. People kill people.
You're right. Yeah.
So I hope that clarifies. I know Dan was wanting to hear this, and and I've been putting this off, man. I've been putting it off because it's just such muddy water intellectually, and it's difficult to think about. And how do you reconcile a principled approach to individual rights with shutting down private businesses? But if you don't, this is going to happen, and so on and so forth. It's honestly been one of the biggest intellectual challenges I've had to work out in a while, which has actually been kind of fun.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, good, man. Good. And it's kind of like, the abortion issue. Like, those are really muddy waters, really muddy. The left uses the right's argument and the right uses the left's argument.
Yeah.
In this particular case, what I mean?
I don't even argue the abortion thing. It's dear listener, Luke and I have an agreement to really not discuss the abortion issue in these hallowed halls. It's not
right?
I don't think it's that we don't want to discuss it. It's just that it's pointless. I mean, people have their minds made up on abortion, and that's it. There's no changing that.
Yeah.
I would just ask people that when they argue abortion, they need to again get their. I mean, this is why the right does such a good job of arguing abortion, is because they have their premises and they do not depart from them.
Right.
They're not talking about like abortion works or not working. They're like, no, it's murder. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And people, I see people on the left like trying to reframe pro-lifers as anti-choice. And I tell people on the left, I'm like, that's not going to work. You know why? Because you haven't addressed the root issue, which is the premise of when life begins. So if you call a pro-lifer, if you say that they're actually anti-choice, they'll go, yeah, you're damn right I'm anti-choice, because you shouldn't be able to choose to murder. They'll just totally own it.
Yeah.
And this is why when you say freedom fails sometimes, and, but most of the time freedom works, the left would totally own that too, for the same reason. Right. You just cucked on their premises.
Right. But, I just wanted to, compare and contrast the abortion issue with the Kung Flu issue, the Flu Manchu issue, as I've recently heard. Okay. And so, because it is you, China, it was always you, just like Tucker told you. It was you the whole time. I knew it was you, Fredo. I knew it was you. Anyways, there is an element of volition with abortion. Okay. What we're talking about here, right? Yes, it's a muddy issue, right? We're talking about, in the case of the Flu Manchu, there is an external threat. Okay. It is not about will at this point in time. It is an external threat that muddies the waters, right? As opposed to human will muddying the waters at this point. Except in these particular cases, like I argued about the woman, her personal choice was to go infect everybody. You know what I mean? That's it. Anyway. So, and it's a crucial distinction, and that is because of this. Okay. When you deal with something external that is encroaching, okay, this is defensive. You have to be defensive minded. Okay. When you're talking about abortion, this is an offensive issue on both sides. Okay. There are crucial distinctions here. In my estimation, they're equally muddy. And I do understand why you struggled with it, Luke. I do. It's a hard issue to pick apart. You know what I mean? It really is. So that's
all right.
it.
Well, why don't we move on, man? I mean, do we want to do a third segment so we can talk about the Fed?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Well, let me, I'm going to move on then. I got two more little topics here, and then we'll break and do third segment. So,
all right, let's do it.
Coronavirus, restaurant. I've got a piece here, and this kind of is piggybacking on the last one, so we can sort of concretize at least some of the destruction that's happened as a result of this forced lockdown. So the restaurant industry faces down apocalypse. This is a Business Insider piece. The restaurant industry lost an estimated $25 billion in sales and more than 3 million jobs in the first 22 days of March.
Unreal.
Roughly 30,000 restaurants have already closed for good, permanently. 30,000 restaurants across the country, with more than 110,000 expected to shutter in the next month, according to estimates by the National Restaurant Association. Quote, any pundit who thinks that they're going to use a recent history, and by recent history, I mean the last 100 years, including the Depression, as a template for what is going to go on here, they're kidding themselves, said restaurant industry investor and advisor Roger Lipton. So I'm going to go on a little bit. 11% of the more than 4,000 restaurant owners and operators surveyed by the National Restaurant Association, which is the other NRA, last week said that they anticipate they will permanently close within the next 30 days. So this lockdown is potentially going to cost 11% of all restaurants in the United States. Gone.
Yep.
3% said that they had already permanently closed the doors. So actually we're looking at 14% permanent. So 15% of the restaurant industry is just gone. Wiped off the face of the earth. If these figures are applied to the more than 1 million restaurants that the NRA estimates exists across America, that would mean 30,000 restaurants are already gone. Roughly 110,000 more are expected to go the same way within the next month based on these calculations. So, I mean, dude, this is devastating. And I would imagine that in the weeks following, we'll have numbers that won't ever be reported of restaurants closing because they ran out of money after the lockdown. I mean, operating a restaurant is like most restaurants fail. Operating a restaurant is extremely, extremely difficult. And I mean, something like this is just, I would be shocked if it was only 15%. We'd be getting off light.
Hashtag me too.
If that were the case.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
So,
and that's only one industry. God, man, there's so many others, right? Think about things like barbershops. Yep. Took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah. And man, that I prepped pretty well for this, but man, the one thing I did not do is get a haircut, man. Do you know how to cut your own hair? I'm fixing to teach myself how to cut my own hair. I need a haircut so bad.
I know how to shave my head, but
yeah, I know how to do that, but I don't know if I'm willing to become such a victim of the flu Manchu that I shave my head, you know?
You're going to do it. So what is the scene in that movie where it's like, you know, the lighting is like very dark and dystopian. It's like sort of a blue lighting and there's somebody standing in front of the mirror, like shaving their head. Leaning on the sink.
Yeah.
Oh, what is that movie?
It's not Fight Club. No, it's not. Dang, I can't recall. I recall the scene perfectly. I can't recall the movie title.
Yeah, it's like sort of a Matrix type vibe in the scene.
Yeah. Where is John when you need him? He would know.
Yeah, I can't remember. We'll get back to you on this next week, dear listener.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
But no, dude, I thought ahead on that. I actually got my barber's personal phone number. And he said he's got the gear and I can come over to his house and get a haircut, but I'm trying to hold off on that.
That's awesome. So. Yeah.
Got a pretty, I don't know if I'm going to be able to, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to do some Friday Night Comfy posts with this haircut. Or lack of haircut, I should say.
I heard that, I know.
Start wearing beanies on the stream.
Right.
My hair is going to be like coming out the bottom. Looking like surfer dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Dang. I mean, you know, I'll send you a video. I saw a pretty god tier video about how to cut your own hair. I'll send it to you. But the problem is, you know, I don't have clippers. So that means that I'm going to have to go somewhere and buy clippers. And like going out in the public right now is not something I'm really crazy about doing. In fact, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so, I would, man, I would. Here's a couple of tips, dear listener. All right. So first of all, I track the numbers every single day and I figure out how many people, what percentage chance I have of interacting with somebody with coronavirus when I'm out in the public here. And here in Germany, we've got about 90,000, 91,000 cases. And given the population of Germany, it's about 82 million. So I have about a 1 in 1,000 chance of coming across somebody with corona here.
Right.
So that's pretty white pilling. What I also do is something they teach you in the military. I haven't been in the military, but I have a friend that was who told me about this one time. They teach you that if you have to touch things you don't want to touch for whatever reason, bacteria or disease or whatever, you use one hand to touch stuff you don't want to touch, and then you choose the other hand to touch stuff you do want to touch.
That's so funny. I knew that instinctually, right? I didn't know that from military training, but I just knew it instinctively.
Yeah. So anyway, when I'm at the grocery store, what I tell Jessica, what we do is I have a box of rubber gloves. So I put one rubber glove on my right hand, and then my left hand I don't put a rubber glove on. And
because Luke is left-handed, dear listener, just a bit of trivia.
Well, I'm kind of weird, man. Like I do
I'm the same way. I'm kind of ambidextrous. Yeah.
Like I can on a whiteboard, I can write right-handed and left-handed, and I can write right-handed and left-handed forwards and backwards.
Dang, that's impressive.
Yeah, but like I can't like on a paper sit down and write. It's because like growing up, I learned small motor skills like writing, shaving, stuff like this. I learned left-handed, but throwing balls and stuff like this, like throwing a football, well, I can do that right-handed and left-handed. But like,
yeah, you do throw a ball right-handed. Yeah, you do.
But yes, it's like certain things I learned to do with each hand growing up, but it's not like I can do everything equally as well with both hands, you know?
Right. I'm the same way. Well, except for cutting, I can cut with scissors with both my left hand and my right hand, strangely enough. But like Luke, at my work, well, until I was sent home on Friday, at my work, I have a Mac on my right and a PC on my left, right? Each has their own mouse, and I have the two keyboards right next to each other, and I mouse one computer with my left hand and mouse the other with my right. And I can do them both at the same time. It's interesting.
Wow, that's impressive. I don't think I can do that.
Well, I'll tell you why I learned how to do it. It was because of that ski trip we took back in 2013, and I broke my wrist. Right, I learned how to mouse left-handed. That's how I did it. Right, but I can somehow do it both simultaneously now. It's weird. I still feel
bad about convincing you to snowboard, and then you break your wrist.
Wasn't your fault, man. I mean, if there was good powder that year, it wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? So yeah. I just wish it was a spectacular wipeout, man. I wish it wasn't a cut move like how it happened.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
yeah.
So yeah, this is, this article, dear listener, is just nothing more than just to sort of concretize the destruction that we're seeing today, and that needs to be put into context when we think about all this lockdown stuff. The last thing I wanted to talk about before break, unless you wanted to comment on that, Russ.
No, sir, not at all.
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to talk about is something I've noticed, which is the psyche of the public in response to all of this. It is shocking to me how society, how we have all been so trained and conditioned to be dependent upon the government when something like this happens. If here I am LARPing, if we were in a free society, we wouldn't be looking to the government to solve the problem. We'd be looking to the healthcare industry to solve our problems. Now,
our friends and family to solve the problems.
Yeah, I mean, there's some, narrow instances, and like we talked about, like shutting down the borders if a threat is imminent, things like this, proper role of government sort of things. But like, we wouldn't be having press conferences every day going, what is the government going to do?
Right.
Is the government going to save us? What's going on? No, we should be saying, is the healthcare industry going to save us? Is the healthcare industry not prepared for this? Why are they not prepared?
I get what you're saying. I'm going to reframe that just a little bit. Will the individuals within the healthcare industry save us? Right. Because it is about human to human interaction.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I view them as sort of one and the same, but yeah, that definitely clarifies it for sure. So like when something bad happens, they don't look to the industry which can solve the problem. They look at the government to solve the problem.
I know. And it's really disappointing, isn't it?
And the public, they've just been trained and conditioned to rely upon the government wholesale. So it's like the right needs to get their shit together on this too, because they're the ones that are going on about like, oh, hey, you can't rely on the government, blah, blah, blah. And then something happens like this. And then they turn around and like, oh, what's the government going to do? What's the government going to do? You need to retrain your thinking and start thinking about like, what are, as Russ said, the individuals in the healthcare industry? What are our entrepreneurs going to do? What are our, medical doctors going to do to alleviate this? What are our engineers going to do? What are our companies going to do? What are we going to do to solve the problem? That's how we have to start thinking, not the government.
Absolutely. I've been thinking about it a lot, man. It's really disheartening. I've been thinking about this very topic extensively, right? And you know what it is, Luke, that has caused this condition? It is this, since pretty much the New Deal, right, in the 40s, it's this blob party thinking of, right buying into left premises, left buying into right premises, premises flip, right? This one blob party that has conditioned a mighty people, a free people, into subservience to government. And it's a shit ass way to be, man.
Reliance,
it really
and dependency.
is. And yes. Yeah. It's sad, man. It really is. But it's one of these things that is so sad that I can't even get triggered about it, man.
It's just par for the course, dude.
What else would happen? Yeah, exactly.
And like the media doesn't help either. It's like, what are these press conferences if nothing but the Jim Accosters coming out just going, what are you doing, Trump? What are you doing? What are you not doing? Blah, 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 blah. The American people deserve an answer. Like these press conferences should be happening with industry titans in the healthcare industry and CEOs of manufacturing companies. And
well, Trump did do one about 2 weeks ago with titans of industry, CEOs of, Walmart, Walgreens, all of these other CEOs. And they talked about how they were going to partner with the government to get us through this. It was so smart.
Totally.
It was so well done. It was Friday 2 weeks ago.
And to the extent that Trump does this stuff is the extent to which I support him, because no other politician would be doing this.
Yeah.
I don't even know that Ted Cruz would be doing this, to be honest with you.
That's a fair point, man. Yeah. I know Tucker wouldn't. I know he wouldn't, So
yeah. Tucker would
be
like,
that's a great observation.
In response to coronavirus, I've broken up Facebook and Google and
and we're going to embargo China on everything, and we're probably going to nuke them starting tomorrow. Kidding, Tucker. Kidding. We know you listen to the show. I'm just kidding.
I mean, there are, Daily Caller, man. There are Ashburn, Virginia listeners.
Yeah, they are. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are.
All right, dude. Well, let's go to break, and then, dear listener, when we come back from break, we've got a good segment. Russ is going to black pill on the Fed.
Yes. Yes, I am.
And
yes, I am.
And then we're going to close out the show. But before you take us to break, dear listener, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe. We're doing Friday Night Comfy Post. The Shoe Bros have some great interviews that they've been throwing down lately. Follow us on Facebook at Zero Gravity Med. Follow us on Twitter at Zero Gravity Med. And like, share, subscribe. We'd very much appreciate it. Russ, do you want to take us out to break?
Yeah, man, I'll do it. So, dear listener, I've got some audio here that listen. Okay, I love Tucker. I love Judge Jeanine. I love numerous shows on Fox. But if there is one show that you watch every single week, it has to be Sunday Morning Futures with Maria Bartiromo. Okay, Bartiromo, as she says it. My bad. Sorry, Maria. We know you listen to the show too. Okay, she had a god tier interview with John Kennedy, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana. And Luke, I'm dying for you to listen to this, man. It is so funny. It is so good. The topic is the spending bill, the bailout, quote, package, that term that Luke and I hate so much. And it is hilarious. Even Maria herself was laughing, and she's usually pretty stoic during her shows. So we hope you enjoy it, dear listener. We have made it 2/3 of the way down this 76-mile trail. Enjoy Maria and John Kennedy, and Luke and I will be back at you before you know it.
Welcome back. The CDC issuing a domestic travel advisory for New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, with New York now outranking most countries in coronavirus cases. Meanwhile, several other urban areas across the country are preparing for what could be their worst weeks yet amid the pandemic, including New Orleans, which health experts say could be the next big hotspot. Joining me right now from the great state of Louisiana, Republican Senator John Kennedy. Senator, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Mary.
What do we know about New Orleans, about Louisiana, in terms of the number of cases and how the state is preparing for what seems to be coming at you?
We are coping, Maria. We have about 3,300 cases. We've had around 130 deaths. We're clearly a hot spot. It began in New Orleans, and it's kind of moving out throughout the state. We're trying to save lives, and we're also trying to save livelihoods because our economy's shut down. The legislation we just passed will help. It'll get money directly to people. to hospitals, to businesses. I will say that a lot of my people are very upset at the spending porn on pet projects that was slipped into the bill. But my people are also grateful for help from the American taxpayer.
Well, let's talk about that. What do you see as porn that you were forced to put in here? Lindsey Graham just came on and said that his colleagues on the left, or he said Nancy Pelosi specifically put a gun to his head in terms of getting that $25 million in there for the Kennedy Center. What else falls under the word porn, as you put it?
Well, you know, life is hard, but it's harder when you're stupid. And there's an enormous amount of spending porn on pet projects that was put into this bill by some powerful members of Congress. They think the American people, I guess, are morons and won't notice, but they did. It's why so many Americans think there's no intelligent life in Washington, D.C., is why Congress polls right up there with robocalls and sinkholes. This is what many Americans heard members of Congress saying. Oh, my God, we could run out of ventilators. Oh, my God, people could die. Quick, let's give money to the Kennedy Center and the post office. Now, that tells the American people that common sense is dead in Washington, D.C. It was not a Lincoln moment. Nonetheless, those of us who are fiscal conservatives, we swallowed it. We had to. We passed the bill. I think it's going to help the American people. But a pox on the House and houses of all those members of Congress who took advantage of this disaster, this tragedy, to take care of their pet projects.
Yeah. And you said to me when we spoke over the phone that there will be other things that will come to light that people will recognize that are in this bill and continue to anger people. I want you to walk through some of that, because something you mentioned to me when we were talking on the phone about suntan lotion. We'll take a quick break, and then we want to come back with that, Senator. Senator John Kennedy is with me this morning. We are looking ahead on Sunday Morning Futures, and he is walking us through the bill. Back in a moment. Welcome back, and we're back with Louisiana Senator John Kennedy. And Senator, we're talking about what is in this relief package. And over the weekend, you mentioned to me something about suntan lotion that people were not aware of that's in this bill. Can you tell us what's in the bill that we are unaware of?
Yes, there's all kind of porn in this bill. There's a provision to speed up FDA review of sunscreen products. There's money in this bill for the National Endowment for the Arts, for the National Endowment for Humanities. There's money in this bill for housing. There's money in this bill for NASA. There's money in this bill for a $500,000 water project in Utah. I made a list, Maria. There's money in here for the Smithsonian. I love the Smithsonian. Had to agree to all of this? It's not a priority right now. And let me say one more thing. The Department of Treasury in Washington is holding $26 billion of uncashed savings bonds that belong to the American people. I tried to put a provision in to tell Treasury to give the names and addresses to the state treasurers so they can start getting this money back to people when they really need it. I was told, it's not relevant to the bill. And then I pick up the bill and see stuff in here like sunscreen review at the FDA, money for housing.
Unbelievable.
Money for NASA. So I mean, it's perverse.
You had to agree to all of this. You had to agree to all of this to get your colleagues on the left to vote for unemployment benefits and to get cash into America's pockets during this recession critical moment in time. That's the only way you get their vote?
It was started by Speaker Pelosi with her left of linen bridge to nowhere projects. But I think once we drill down, we're going to find out that she's not the only one. I think some other people in powerful positions piled on, and I don't like it. And it's not fair to the American people. Now, look, I'm tight as a tick. I squeak when I walk. I'm so cheap with taxpayer money. But I said, look, this is necessary. I swallowed it and said, we're going to spend $2 trillion plus because the American people need it. But when I pick up this bill and see this kind of spending porn where people were taking advantage of a catastrophe for the American people, it pisses me off.
Well, I'll tell you what is upsetting Americans, and it's this reliance on China for so many important products like the active ingredients in our prescription drugs. And speaking of spending, who's buying all this debt, Senator? China?
Well, let me speak to that, your observation about China, because it's a very good one. In capitalism, in free markets, our people produce products and product components at the cheapest venue. But sometimes the cheapest is not in your national interest. And we may be able to buy components for pharmaceutical drugs cheaper in China, but we've learned through this experience that may not be in the national interest. And after this is over and we beat the virus, and we will, you're going to see some changes.
So what are you going to do about it?
Long overdue.
Yeah, you're right. We are looking for legislation to ensure that America is not so reliant on China. We know that they threatened to hold back those prescription drugs in the middle of all of this.
Welcome back to HSP episode number 76, dear listener. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Zero Gravity Med. Like, share, subscribe on YouTube. Just search Zero Gravity Media and look for our YouTube logo. Russ, dude, John Kennedy, that guy cracks me up.
I know, dude. What an interview, man. That was honestly, Tucker threw down some masterpieces, but that was the highlight of the week. I wish it had happened before we recorded number 75, but it happened the next morning after we recorded. Alas,
I love all of his all of his country boy idioms. I'm as tight as a tick.
Yeah. Tight as a tick. Yeah. With spending the taxpayers' money. I do too, dude. He's God tier, man. I love the man already, but I've really been liking his messaging through this crisis. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
I've been loving it.
Totally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
By the way,
he's one of those.
No. You go ahead, because I was going to change topics.
I was just going to say that, he is a senator, so he is not Freedom Caucus, but you can tell, dear listener, by his thoughts, he is definitely Freedom Caucus, Tea Party minded. No doubt about it. He is in this posse with us right here.
I mean, he's a senator. The Freedom Caucus is more, that's House, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly. Ted Cruz is not Freedom Caucus. Because the Freedom Caucus is House. Right.
He would be if he was in the House, but yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I was going to change subjects a little bit, man. Something that we didn't even talk about in the pre-show call. Red pilled me a little bit on this whole poll thing with the...
Oh.
Because I saw the thread and I kind of got the gist, but red pilled listener on what happened on 4chan this week.
Okay. So this saved my entire psychology this week, Luke, because it was so funny. Okay. Because dear listener, I was kind of doom spiraling there for a little bit. I was like, damn, man.
You're becoming a doomer.
We're shut down. Yeah, I was becoming a straight doomer. Yes. Yeah. But this got me laughing and I kind of shook it. What were you going to say?
No, I was just laughing about you becoming a doomer.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, because I dear listener, listen, I ain't trying to cry or nothing, but I live alone, right? I've had 3 interactions with live human beings this week. It's insane, right? It's just insane. So anyways, let's don't go there. So I was in a bad place, right? And I woke up at 5:45, like I always do on April Fool's Day on Wednesday, right? And I jumped on poll. Right. And I was like, oh, great. Another shitty day on poll. There's nothing going on. Great. Close. Right. I'm out. Right. Go to work. Get on with my day. It's very busy. I don't really have time to check poll again until about 11:30. And then I get on there and there is mass hysteria. Right. Immuno Chads gather here. Infected Chads gather here. oh my God, stay back, you filthy animals. This kind of stuff. Here, I'm not going to live long. Take my virus, right? And so what had happened in the meantime, dear listener, on poll, is that people were sitting there just doing their thing on a message board, right? And everybody is named anonymous, right? So all of a sudden what started happening is that these weird characters, these weird lines in the title, anonymous for the poster's name, started posting up, right? And then all of a sudden, people's posts over time started turning a little bit green. And everybody's like, oh, damn, why is my post green, bro? You got the Kung flu, man. You got the flu Manchu. You stay over there. You stay over there. Well, then all of a sudden, everybody started getting infected with its green coloring on their posts on poll. And it created mass hysteria. And it was so funny. I mean, Luke, it was one of those things like Tay, right? It was one of those things like that where you're just like, this is why I come to this shithole. This is what keeps me coming back.
Did they ever figure out what was spreading it, though?
Ahead.
I think I know, but I don't know for sure.
It's funny you say that. Not that I read, and I was so busy that I didn't really have time to get into it and read it, right? But there were all of these threads about, we've got to figure out how to cure the virus, lads. We've got to figure out what's causing it, right? Okay, is it when you reply to somebody who has the virus? Do you get the virus? Is it when you get comments? Are you immune to the virus? Let's figure this out. Let's get data over here. Don't sweat it, bro. V has the cure. Go over to V. They've already got the cure. Just things like this, right? So it sounds to me like it was just random, that the programmers just programmed it randomly, you know?
So for anybody, we haven't talked about poll in a while. For anybody who doesn't know what poll is the politically, it's short for politically incorrect board on 4chan. So it's the politics board, the politics chat board on 4chan.
Yep. And it has been so dark, man. I was really thinking poll would be great during the Democrat primaries. It hasn't been. It's been shit, absolute shit. And so to see it get energized like this again was indeed refreshing. It was fun. It was like old.
I don't remember
old
if
poll.
I came to this under my own conclusion or if I read it somewhere. But I'm actually sitting here thinking, I'm like, maybe even I had a dream. I don't know. It's like a few days ago, but I think it's when you get dubs and trips and quads is the extent to which you're infected. No, I remember, dude. It was shower thought. I was in the shower thinking, like, if I were a programmer, how would I? This is what it was. I was thinking, if I were a programmer, how would I program the R naught, which is like the, if one person gets the disease, how many people did they spread it to? How would I program the R naught? And the R naught,
R sub zero is what that is. R naught is R sub zero. That's it. All right. Go on.
No worries.
Sorry.
I was like, as a programmer, I would do it on poll. I would do it based upon your post ID, because each comment, dear listener, gets its own. How many digits are they on now? It's like 8 digits or something, 10 digits.
Yeah.
So every digit. I mean, and there's like 100,000 posts. I don't remember the metrics, but it's one of the most active forums on the internet, and hundreds of thousands of posts a day. And I was like, I would do the R naught on your probability. Well, not probability, on whether you get. So dubs is like, if the last 2 digits of your post ID, your comment ID, your post ID, are like 22, right? So your post, you're the 9,877,000 and then 322nd posts in the history of 4chan. You make a comment and that's what it is, right? So it's like, that's how I would do it. I would do it, and I don't know if anybody's analyzed that, but I would do it and because I noticed some are like more green than others. Like some comments are more green than others, and so I would like have a very high R naught for somebody who gets dubs, like 4 digits. The last digits are the same, and I don't know, but I don't know if that's it or not.
Yeah. I don't know either. As far as I know, they did not figure it out, but they were trying really hard. And like, dear listener, when 4chan puts its mind to something, they usually get results. And this time, I don't think that they figured it out. So yeah. I have no idea. Maybe random. maybe exactly what Luke said about dubs, trips, quads. I don't know. So, oh man, but that was just so funny. It brought true hilarity and laughter to my sickened psychological state.
Is it still going on at this point? Are they still trying to
to
figure out the cause?
No, it ended on April Fool's Day. And I don't know. Since April Fool's, I have not been on poll. So I don't know. I don't know what's been going on.
I mean, I just generally don't get on it very much.
Yeah. It's not been great lately, but you know, I feel certain that invigorated its spirit again, you know. And, you know, also, dear listener, to throw a little bit of context in here. OK, 4chan plays an April Fool's joke every year. Right. And was it last year or 2 years ago? What they did is they came out with a post on April Fool's Day and they were like, yo, we're short of funding right now. We have to save bandwidth. And we're combining the My Little Pony forum with poll. So it was ML poll.
That was last year. It was my little. It was my little
last
poll.
year. Okay,
yeah, ML poll.
Yeah, My Little Poll. and just so you know, the My Little Pony forum, dear listener, it's these weird people that are into all this kind of furry shit. Yeah, you know, yeah. So yeah, and so combining them with a forum of abject chaos like poll, it's bound to cause problems, and it did. It did.
Most definitely.
Yeah. It was funny. It was funny stuff. But this one, man, that was just perfectly timed because of this pandemic. You know what I mean? Just perfect. Absolutely perfect. You know?
Well, let's blackpill, dear listener, on our way out.
Oh, dang. Okay. All right, dear listener, we're going to try to make this as quick as we possibly can. We're going to set up camp and ride on out of here. All right. So, you know, John Kennedy in the segment with Maria Bartiromo brought it up perfectly. Okay. There is a spending crisis here. Okay. And the left are really being exposed for funding their pet projects and advancing their agenda. Right. Keep in mind, as Luke and I called out last weekend, Nancy Pelosi tried to fund the Green New Death in her version of the bailout bill. Okay. So, but John Kennedy just elucidated us about the fact that the left absolutely forced the right to spend on all of these stupid things like speeding up FDA approval of sunscreen. Ridiculous. Okay. Now, maybe that needs to happen. Maybe those regulations need to go away. But in this bill, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Okay. Well, there's a dirty back end to this. Okay. And that is this. That bailout bill funded citizens, some industry, right? But there is a backdoor bailout that's going on, and it's coming from the Federal Reserve, and it is really harrowing. And the context of this, dear listener, is that we have a spending, Luke and I have always called it a spending crisis, a debt crisis. This is now a catastrophe, absolute catastrophe. Okay. But there is a little bit of a white pill to it. Okay. And I've got two pieces here. I'm going to blaze through them. This one dropped on Bloomberg last Sunday. Okay. I can't remember who wrote it, but I want to take it from the lead. Yeah. Bloomberg. Indeed. How could I forget?
He's not in the race anymore, so we have to keep that alive.
Yeah, exactly. My bad, man. My bad. It is a vitriolic anti-Donald Trump piece.
Spurging.
The title of the piece is spurging, straight spurging. Yeah, of course, Bloomberg let this piece go on his airwaves. It's anti-Trump. You know what I mean? Of course he did. So, title of the piece is "The Fed's Cure Risks Being Worse Than the Disease." Why? What does that sound like to you, Luke? That sounds a lot like something Donald J. Trump said to me. That's what it sounds like. Coming from a leftist writer at a leftist shitlib rag, this is fascinating. All right? I'm going to take it from the lead. It goes thus. The economic debate of the day centers on whether the cure of an economic shutdown is worse than the disease of the virus. Similarly, we need to ask if the cure of the Federal Reserve getting so deeply into corporate bonds, asset-backed securities, commercial paper, and exchange-traded funds is worse than the disease seizing financial markets. It may be. In just these past few weeks, the Fed has cut rates by 150 basis points to near zero and run through its entire 2008 crisis handbook. That wasn't enough to calm the markets, though. So the central bank also announced a $1 trillion a day in repurchase agreements and unlimited quantitative easing, which includes a hard-to-understand $625 billion of bond buying a week going forward. At this rate, the Fed will own 2/3 of the Treasury market in a year. But it's the alphabet soup of new programs that deserve special consideration, as they could have profound long-term consequences for the functioning of the Fed. This is critical, dear listener, for the functioning of the Fed and the allocation of capital in financial markets. Specifically, these are, I'm just going to list them, I'm not going to read it. The CPFF, the Commercial Paper Funding Facility, the PMCCF, Primary Market Corporate Credit Facility, TALF, the Term Asset-Backed Securities Loan Facility, SMCCF, Secondary Market Corporate Credit Facility, MSBLP, Main Street Business Lending Program, and too many others. Okay. To put it bluntly, the Fed isn't allowed to do any of this. The central bank is only allowed to purchase or lend against securities that have government guarantee. This is a crucial point. Let me read it one more again, dear listener, for maximum retention. To put it bluntly, the Fed is not allowed to do any of this. The central bank is only allowed to purchase or lend against securities that have government guarantee, like U.S. Treasury notes. So how can they do this? The Fed will finance a special purpose vehicle, SPV, for each acronym to conduct these operations. The Treasury, using the Exchange Stabilization Fund, will make an equity investment in each SPV and be in a, quote, first loss position. What does this mean? In essence, the Treasury, not the Fed, is buying all these securities and backstopping of loans. The Fed is acting as banker and providing financing. The Fed hired BlackRock Incorporated to purchase these securities and handle the administration of the SPVs on behalf of the owner, the Treasury, which, dear listener, this is the crucial distinction, okay? The Treasury is we the people's money, okay? We have surrendered the rights, the ownership of our own currency to a private central bank known as the Federal Reserve. These are arcane details, but they are very important for you to keep in mind. Let me hit it out of the park with these last two sentences from the piece. In other words, the federal government is nationalizing large swaths of the financial markets. The Fed is providing the money to do it. BlackRock will be doing the trades. This scheme essentially merges the Fed and the Treasury into one organization. So, as disdainfully as this author writes it, meet your new Fed chairman, Donald J. Trump. Damn right, boy. That's the white pill, okay? It's very black pilling about how much money we're spending. Dear listener, $1 trillion a day to backstop banks, hedge funds, the New York Times, industries like the airline industry, right? We're spending $1 trillion a day that we don't have, okay? Now, we're not selling debt. We're not selling treasuries to get this money essentially to China, right? We are printing new currency from the private bank known as the Federal Reserve. And thereby, we are diluting our spending power, right? It's like this, okay? There are $22 trillion in circulation, okay? You print up $1 trillion a day. Now, all of a sudden, there are $30 trillion in circulation, okay? That means that $100 you had, rather than being a part of 22 trillion, is now diluted by approximately, let's call it about 40%. In now your $100 is participating in a market of dollars with 30 trillion. Okay. This is a problem. Okay. The white pill is this. Okay. As the piece just said, disdainfully, the Treasury and the Fed have essentially been merged. Okay. The Fed has become the banker for the United States Treasury. Okay. That's our money right there. So essentially what the piece is arguing quite correctly is that the Fed is no longer a private central bank. Okay. It has been merged. It has been taken over. It is now the people's money. It's not Rockefeller money. It's not Rothschild money anymore. It is Treasury money, right? At the direction of the Treasury. Okay. In other words, all of these corporate bonds that the Fed is buying, all of this bailout money that the Fed is buying, all of this repo that the Fed is giving money for is now owned by we the people and not by a central bank. And so, Luke, you know, I've got a zero hedge piece right here after it because zero hedge is always on the drop on all this. Dear listener, they've always got it and they can break it down so simply and they prove it.
Like who decided this? Like who made this happen?
I think Steve Mnuchin. In fact, no, I don't think. I know Steve Mnuchin did it.
And
Steve Mnuchin just killed the Fed.
Okay, so and the motive was to kill the Fed. Then
I think so. I can't prove that. I can't prove motive yet. Yeah, but I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's good, man. Yeah. The black pill is this, dear listener, we're spending so much money that we don't have. We're printing new money into existence. Recall 3 shows back, Luke and I just hit it and quit it about how there was what was it at that point in time? A $12 trillion shortfall of debt in the world financial system denominated in US dollars. In other words, there literally were not enough dollars in existence to cover that amount of debt. That doesn't even consider derivatives. So we're not going to go there right now. Let's just stay away from derivatives. Let's just stay on actual physical debt. There was not enough USD in existence to cover the amount of debt that was in the world financial system, right? So what did the Fed start doing? They started repoing. They started guaranteeing loans to banks so that they could stay solvent for one more day. This got so bad to the point that last week, the Fed was literally printing up $1 trillion per day in order to buy corporate bonds, which is debt, in order to buy asset-backed securities, which is debt.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. So basically what we're talking is like, this is how a hyperinflation event happens.
Yes. This is it. Yes. This is exactly it.
And what that means, what Russ is getting at here, dear listeners, we're to like try to concretize this because this is all very abstract. Like what inflation is if you take, you know, wherever you're listening to this, if you're listening to this in your car, your bedroom, just think about your bedroom. Everyone has a bedroom, right? Take all the stuff that's in your bedroom, right? Your bed, you got a TV in there, right? Right. And you could quantify that with some amount of dollars. Say everything's worth $100, right? If you now introduce another $100 into circulation, then that doesn't mean that you're wealthier. It means that all the stuff in your bedroom is worth less.
Less. Exactly.
So now to buy all the stuff in your bedroom, it's no longer $100. Now it's $200.
Mm-hmm.
So what it means, so I'm sorry, it's not the stuff in your bedroom is worth less. It means that the individual units, which we use to quantify what those things are worth, which is the currency.
Right. The yardstick used to measure that worth just doubled in length is what it means.
So that means each unit is worth less. So now it's 200 units to purchase the same amount of stuff that's in your bedroom. That's what inflation is.
Exactly. Yeah. But the white pill of it, as black pilling as that is, and it is a desperate black pill, the white pill of it, okay, is that the private central bank, the Federal Reserve, no longer owns these corporate bonds. They're forced to give money to purchase. They no longer own these asset-backed securities, okay? They no longer own any of this. We, the people, own it. That has been transferred to Treasury. Okay. Now, do we take on the debt? Yes. But now we have assets in exchange as differentiated from the 2008, 2009 financial bailouts. That's basically it. Yeah.
Interesting. Dude, that is a fascinating development.
It is. It is, man. It is. It's scary. It's scary, but it is fascinating. So, dear listener, we're going to stay on top of this Fed malfeasance. Don't you sweat it. We'll be talking about this a lot.
All right, dude. Well, is that it? Is that the show?
I think so. I think so, man. Yeah. Yeah. My horse is getting a little tired, man. How's yours doing?
Yeah. Getting a little tired too. I need to break camp.
All right.
I got some chill. I got some chili. We made some chili today.
Oh,
so
good, man. Yeah. I'm unfreezing some chili tonight to eat. As a matter of fact. So, man, we got chili for the campfire tonight. That's fantastic. Perfect.
Right, we're unified.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Yeah.
Chili for everybody. All right, dear listener, we have made it all 76 miles down this trail. Thank you so much for riding along with us. We hope you enjoyed it as much as Luke and I did. Luke, I, for one, am looking forward to setting up camp, and we are going to enjoy each other's company. We're going to have some cornbread and chili tonight, dear listener. That's what's up.
All right. Till next time, dear listener. And by the way, don't forget, again, to like, share, subscribe. Find us on YouTube by searching Zero Gravity Media. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Zero Gravity Med. Till next time, dear listener.
All right, Luke, you take care of yourself, man.
Yeah, you too, man.
All right.
Peace.
Late.